The spoils of war have come and gone, and I hope too many of you weren't spoiled ahead of time on the spoils of war, because, there was the leaks and everything. But it was an amazing episode, really spectacular, really fun, and of course we have a lot to say about it. And thankfully, there's no Storm God messing with us today, as far as we know, so we do have Lady Gwyn, which is great. So welcome back, Lady Gwyn of Radio Westeros. How you doing?
I'm very happy to be here. It was a total bummer. I sat in the dark for 3 hours last week while you guys had fun.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun at all.
Glad I'm here, though.
And Yoke Boy, of course, is here too.
Hey, broadcasting from deepest England. Really glad to be back.
Cool. And obviously, we have Ashea here, both running production and answering questions and handling all sorts of different things all at once.
Because I am in the live stream, your questions will be answered at the end of the episode. We will get to very few questions throughout it, except unless they're a super chat.
That's right. In fact, we've apparently gotten two super chats already before we even went live. Neither of them had attached questions, but thanks to one anonymous person and thanks to Mike Bruno. Mike, if you have a question that you wanted to submit with that, we'll try to catch that if we can. All right. So a couple of things before we start. Think of how epic that scene with Daenerys and her dragon in the battle was. Now, and then imagine 18 dragons in a war. That's what the Dance of the Dragons was like. There were 18 or 19 dragons. Not all of them fought, but most of them did. And just picture that. Well, we here at History of Westeros and our friends there at Radio Westeros have long talked about doing a joint episode or series of episodes about the Dance of the Dragons, and this just reminds us of how much fun and important a topic it is because of just being reminded of the potency of dragons and how powerful they are. And we now, especially with the news of Fire and Blood Part 1 coming out as soon as next year, we actually have a plan for that, or at least the beginnings of a plan. Because before, we didn't have the complete story, so we were going to have to make up for that, just do what we could. Now we have, apparently in Fire and Blood, we're going to have the whole story, so we can both not have to wait forever to get the whole story and do this joint episode, within a reasonable time frame. So that's really awesome.
We did get a super chat question from Mike Bruno, though. He said, who better to rally the small folk of King's Landing to rise up against Cersei than Gendry, the only living son of Robert, the king of the Great Summer?
We have a lot to say about Gendry this episode. We do have a lot to
say about Gendry, and we will get to it, but it is the truth. I think he is coming, and he has a claim.
Even though we still haven't seen him yet. There's been some clues to how he might appear, and maybe even a few clues on to how he... what he might do there. Oh, my jacket's all messed up here. I got my Dothraki lawyer jacket on here because we're expecting lots of damage, liability claims, fire damage, property claims, all that. So, if you guys need me, give me a call. I'm your man for that. Thanks to all of our patrons and Radio Westeros' patrons as well. We got a lot of questions from y'all, and because there's been so many questions, I've been cutting the podcast versions of these episodes a little short and cutting out some of the Q&A. However, I decided with the last episode, why cut all of it? Why not keep it somewhat and post it for patrons? So what I did on Monday's show only is the live stream was 3 hours, but I took about 40 minutes of questions and put that up for patrons only to hear. I didn't edit it much at all, so it's just questions without an intro or an outro. Just a little extra bonus material. I figure it's better than throwing it on the scrap heap and letting no one hear it. So if you want access to that, Patreon, you can get that for $1 a month. That's all it costs to have access to that bonus material. So really, that's hardly an obstacle at all. So that's cool.
Or you can join us on YouTube.
That's true. You can also just join us here for these live streams and catch it all. Thanks to our Dragon Rider patrons who make so much of this possible. We have, of course, first is Lord Mark of House Joseph, the Snow and Winterfell, rider of Mazalacartho, the white dragon with green scales, horns, wings, and talons, our eldest dragon. And we have Talanis the Talon, king of Gagassos, rider of Telarius, a red dragon with scales, horns, and talons of midnight black, featured here by Ed Shear. Oh, hey, that rhymed. And Jinx of House Lier, green queen of the Rainwood, rumored daughter of a woods witch, rider of Irogenia, a sylphic albino dragon with amethyst eyes and opalescent wings. Art for Irogenia is underway. And also thanks to First Sword Jeff Gnarly the Long Snapper, first and foremost amongst our swordsmen. All right. So if you haven't gotten your patron title, a lot of people have come forward after, we've added a lot more names and titles, and people are having a lot of fun with that. So some people didn't have a name that now are wanting one. We're a little behind on that. We're catching up slowly, so please be patient if we haven't gotten to yet. And also want to say that some people, especially new patrons, I want to make sure you know that there is patron messages. Some of you all sign up and I respond and give you a message and ask what you'd like for this and that, and I never hear back from you all, and that's totally fine, but I just want to make sure that you know that you're getting these messages. Some people are probably ignoring them on purpose, but other people may not be aware that Patreon has an internal messaging system. So that's all I'm going to say about that. I just want to make sure no one is getting lost in the shuffle or lost because they didn't know they were getting emails. We'll start off with something fun here. There's been cameos and in Game of Thrones, and the more they go by, the more cameos they have. Of course, Ed Sheeran was a really famous one. Most of the cameos are a lot sneakier, and a lot of them are musicians. Here is a particularly sneaky one. This is Noah Syndergaard, pitcher for the New York Mets, and he's the guy that throws a spear at the Dothraki right when they clash the line, which is appropriate because he has the highest average fastball velocity among all Major League starters. That was probably too nerdy of a baseball statistic for you guys, but hey, I'm a baseball nerd and I can't help myself. All right. Guys, Radio Westeros, what did you think of the use of sound and music in this episode? I thought it was really excellent and really above the norm. Of course, they always, Ramin Djawadi's amazing, so the music is always great, but I thought it was particularly standout here. Did you guys take note of that, or was that something that you paid attention to much?
Yeah, I always notice the music is just so brilliant in Game of Thrones, and the great thing about it evolves. They pick up themes and motifs, and you hear something, and you've heard it in the previous seasons in a different form or in a different place. And this episode excelled in the battle and also in the cave. I noticed the music was great.
Yeah. It's interesting. That's another form of callback. And on Monday, Sean and I talked about how when you have a TV show that's been running for a long time, you can do lots of callbacks, and it's fun to do those callbacks. What you're just describing, Yoke Boys, musical callbacks, and that's a whole different thing, but a very similar related concept.
Yeah, they use a lot of different motifs for different characters, and sometimes they'll mix them, into one new song.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. I like that a lot. So, one other announcement before we get going. We're going to talk about the symbols a bit this episode for the cave paintings. And our good buddy, Lucifer Means Lightbringer of the Mythical Astronomy of Ice and Fire podcast came to us and suggested us having an extra talk about that. He's got a lot to say about that, of course. That's his specialty. So we're talking about setting up a special episode just for that. It'll probably be on a Friday or a Sunday. So soon, probably. He's excited to talk about it, and I'm game. And so we'll set that up shortly. So y'all, if you have any questions for us with that regard, maybe save them for that. But for now, we'll cover some of the basics at the very least and get in deeper when we've had more time to think about it and process it, etc.
So let's get into it then.
Let's do it.
We start off with the north here, and of course Arya first returns to Winterfell. We'd seen that one shot of her looking at Winterfell from afar on her horse in the trailer last week, and it is a stunning shot. But I also thought it was really funny how Arya keeps getting people laughing at her when she tells them the truth, and that she had basically the same thing happen to her that happened when she tried to get back into the Red Keep in season 1, in that they didn't believe her, they wouldn't let her in, and she told them both times, "I live here."
Yeah, that was a definite callback, wasn't it? It really struck me in that scene. I thought, I've seen that before. And Arya spent her whole arc being other people and wrestling with identity. And now, at this point, so late in the story, she still struggles to be herself. I thought it was, interesting on a kind of thematic level. I'm very glad she stuck around because I thought she was going to ride off.
We got a $20 super chat during that, relevant to Arya. They said, Amber Littlefinger said...
Nice name.
Yeah, nice name. "What's with Arya? Everyone's on Bran's behavior, but Arya's behavior, when she was coming to Winterfell and asked, 'Which Lady Stark?' Red flags. What other Lady Stark would it be? Foreshadowing, either the Faceless Men coming for her or not really Arya." I think it is Arya.
Question. What other Stark would there have been? Lady Stark would there? That's a good question. I didn't catch that.
Well, I think that she would have thought that maybe Jon got married.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was what I thought.
Yeah,
right
okay,
there.
that's a fair point. Yeah, someone marrying someone. Yeah, yeah.
So I think it was a reasonable question to ask, because she didn't know Sansa was there. I don't know what she thinks the deal is with Sansa, where she thought she was, or what was going on, but she certainly didn't think she was at Winterfell.
Yeah, and I do think maybe I wonder about the Faceless Men, whether they're going to come for her. I kind of don't think they will. I kind of think like the wave came for her, and Jaqen was just like meh. So, but I think the books, I don't think it'll be so easy for her to get away. I think they will be coming for her there. So that's a different thing. Do you guys have any takes on that?
I think that she earned their respect. You know, that was the vital thing, and I think she had permission to leave. It was a kind of like, you know, she earned it. She earned something. And I don't think that she's already had the cost in the training. You know, she left having the respect of Jaqen in the TV show. Like you say in the books, it might get more complicated. Who knows?
Amber Littlefinger said in a super chat, if Jon got married, that would be Lady Snow. Arya would definitely be thinking that if Jon is the Lord of Winterfell, he might be legitimized by
That's
now.
true. Yeah, he may call himself Stark. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Like if Jon Snow got married, it would be Lady Snow, but he could take the name Stark. Yeah, certainly Stannis offered him the name Stark. You know, bend the knee and I'll make you a Stark. It'll legitimize you. All right, so let's keep up with the North here. What else about Arya?
Well, we have her reunion with Sansa, which I think was the most moving of the reunions for me since Jon and Sansa met back up, in that the Bran reunions have been heartbreaking, but less moving and more like, Bran, you're so weird. But in this case, I thought it was particularly moving, this conversation that Arya and Sansa had. Aziz, will you please keep the document up for me?
Yes.
In that they have this conversation where they're talking about their journeys and their experiences, the story behind it. And Sansa says hers was not a very pleasant one. And Arya says, mine neither. But our stories aren't over yet. And then Sansa says, no, they're not. And then Arya goes in for the hug first, which I definitely cheered up right there. I thought it was a great scene, great acting. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Lady Gwen, what about you?
I thought it was a great scene, like you said. Very happy to see it. Waited for it for a long time. Obviously, we've never seen these sisters get on like this. Last time they were together, they were throwing things at each other. So, so it was heartwarming after all they've both been through. I did want to point out that scene contained an homage to Maester Luwin's words in A Game of Thrones. In Bran's final point of view chapter in Game of Thrones, when when they learn that Ned is dead, the last sentence in that chapter is Maester Luwin saying, my lords, we shall need to find a stone carver who knew his likeness well. And that's just how it ends.
And here we have, as Sansa says, everyone who knew his likeness well is dead. At least people who know how to carve in stone, which there probably weren't a whole lot of those in the first place. But
yeah, I don't think in the books they ever did manage to find the person who knew his likeness well, because Winterfell was sacked.
Yeah, not long after, right? Yeah. What about you, Yoke Boy?
Yeah, oh, I love the scene. Whoa.
The cat.
That was a cat, yes.
Yeah. He slipped.
Look, I'm glad there's no kitten fighting. Anyway, I thought that the crypts was just like the perfect place to reunify the sisters. It was personal and it was quiet and just a little bit of creepiness in there. But it was lovely to see like these two opposite characters kind of bonding and reflecting over all the damage they've been through and all the changes they've undergone. I thought it was a really beautiful reunion, a great scene, and I really hope that those two can now realize that their personalities can be complementary rather than, they don't need to clash every 5 minutes like they used to. I hope they've both grown up now.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are going to be some clashes, but hopefully they're not big clashes. Hopefully they're just regular sibling rivalry type stuff, or sibling not getting along perfectly.
No more blood
stuff.
oranges.
Yeah, just regular oranges. Yeah, they didn't rush into each other's arms, but they weren't wary or hateful. They certainly love there, and Arya's humanity, was still there, even though she's a little off. But she's still got plenty of humanity left, which is a contrast to Bran, who maybe there's still some humanity left in him that is hiding because of how awful his recent experiences have been. But we'll see.
So let's talk about Bran then.
Yeah, let's do it.
Personally, right off the bat, we saw Bran in his wheelchair, and I was like, man, Vulcan got to making him that wheelchair. It also shows the passing of time, I think. But remember, yes. Vulcan didn't know about how long the longest winter is, so I'm guessing he got his link in like engineering, carpentry, not history.
Or in the South where they don't care about winters as much, maybe.
Yeah, he just didn't remember that.
He's in Dorne.
But he got him a wheelchair built. I've been wondering how that was going to happen, if it was just going to be a thing that happened off screen or what.
Lady Gwen, what did you think about the "chaos is a ladder" line that Bran says to Littlefinger right as they're about to be interrupted? By the way, I think that was a little callback to so many things in the book where something awesome is happening, like conversation, and then something interrupts them before they can finish it. This felt like that.
Yes, definitely like that. It rattled Peter Baelish, didn't it? In a way we rarely get to see him rattled. I think in my opinion, from that point on, the Starks turning against him was pretty heavily telegraphed in the episode. Bran and Arya, and even Sansa, who's been pretty cold to him all along. So I'm pretty sure, I still think we'll get to see Bran reveal Littlefinger with the dagger at Ned's throat from season 1. Incidentally, not the same dagger. I saw a couple people wondering about that.
Yeah, not the same dagger.
Different dagger, but yes, I think we'll see that. I think this kind of hinted at that. Bran is seeing Littlefinger saying and doing things, and Littlefinger's getting a little nervous.
Yeah.
There's something I'd seen a couple people talking about, so I can't credit any one person. I've seen it around a few different people, that Littlefinger is pulling the reverse Ned there. Also, it's easier just drinking milk. Okay. But anyways, but Littlefinger is essentially doing reverse Ned. He's going north to his doom, to where his politicking doesn't do anything.
That's true. That's a good point.
He's just out of his depth completely, as Ned was in the South.
But I am wondering, what is Littlefinger's goal here, specifically here, as in giving the dagger to Bran, but really in general? I liked another joke that I've seen a few people say, is that Littlefinger just knows that boys like gifts, like Sweet Robin. He's just going with what he knows. But also the idea that he's just going to go to each Stark child and express his love for Catelyn. He's just telling him, hey, I had a thing for your mother / your mother figure.
He's almost playing a role of a kind of creepy stepdad, isn't he? Like ingratiating himself with the children, hey, we can be friends, I knew your mother, I loved your mother.
There's definitely an air of...
daddy now. He's being a bit like that in my eyes.
Yeah, there's an air of bribery there, and the fact that he's completely underestimating all of these people as well.
Joe Buckley wanted us to... Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I agree for sure. He's underestimating them.
Yeah.
They're not Sweet Robin.
They're not. No. Joe, but yeah, that's a very simple kid, and these are, epic magic children or whatever you want to call them. Joe Buckley wanted us to point out that there was the shot of going from Bran's dead eyes to Littlefinger's surprised and confused eyes after the Chaos is a Ladder line was really something. Now, I actually went back and watched that scene, the Chaos is a Ladder scene. It's episode 6 of season 3. It's Varys and Littlefinger in the throne room. And the context of that conversation is them both undermining each other and how they're, playing games with each other. And it culminates with Littlefinger revealing that he gave Varys' spy to Joffrey. That spy was Raz. And, of course, we then get Littlefinger's voiceover as we see poor Raz shot full of crossbow bolts by Joffrey. So, yeah. Anyway, that's that. Now... let's go a little farther here with Arya, Sansa, and Bran. And when we get to Arya's fighting scene, I've got more to say about the dagger, but we'll wait for it to come full circle, because Bran giving the dagger is part of what makes this all interesting. So, what do you guys think about the possibility of this happening in the books, about a Stark reunion of most of the kids, maybe even with Rickon, because it's no certainty that Rickon will die in the books. Maybe all of them will have be reunited in the books, where George will actually have time to explore that, where the show is a little bit limited in its time constraints. He can't spend a whole lot of time with them discussing every single aspect of all of their past and everything they've gone through, such as Rickon's death, which maybe that should have been the thing that they talk about. But What do you guys think? Lady Gwyn, start with you.
Well, I thought it was a bit odd that nobody mentions Rickon. Hey, remember that other brother, the other kid that used to be around here? Whatever happened to him?
Nah, I don't remember him. What do you mean?
But as far as the books, I've always felt that there will be a reunion of kind of the four that we're seeing, the 4 point of view Starks. Arya, Jon, Sansa, and Bran. I've always felt really strongly that they're all going to end up back at Winterfell. And I also feel equally strongly, I'm sorry, that Rickon is not going to survive in the books.
Yeah. Oh, well.
But that's,
Brace yourselves, folks. Lady Gwyn's on team Rickon dies.
I'm on team Rickon is a shaggy dog.
What about you, Yoke Boy?
Yeah, I agree with Lady Gwyn. She has always said to me that, it's standard storytelling fare that there's got to be a reunion for the kids. And Lady Gwyn's read a lot of kids' books. So I really trusted her. So I think that the Starks going away, undergoing change, and then coming back home a bit different, kind of could be at the heart of this story. It drove the story in the beginning. Although I think as a saga, it's going to have a few hearts, but certainly this could be, the center of things for the, the northern storyline, if you want.
One thing I'll say to people who are holding out hope for Rickon is, yes, the Shaggy Dog story may mean that his story is pointless, but George came up with the concept of Rickon being a Shaggy Dog story long before he made some of the major changes he's made to the main story. Like, that was before he dropped the 5-year gap and all these other things. So his plans for Rickon very well may have changed. So let's hold on to that.
That's a good point. We got a super chat from Mike Bruno again. Thank you.
Thanks,
who
Mike.
Said, "Do you think Arya receiving the dagger might take the place of her potentially receiving Dark Sister from Jon in the books?" And I'll tell you, that's exactly what we were about to talk about once we got to the Arya Brienne scene. Maybe not in that exact context of getting it from Jon, but getting it from Bran, getting it from Mira if she gets out of the cave.
Yeah.
Generally, the thought that Arya will get Dark Sister is something we're going to talk about, and I think Aziz and I at least agree with.
I'll say for now, I 100% agree, and we're about to get to that in our natural flow, so let's just wait just a second on that, and we'll go into very full detail on that. But just for now, yes, I think that's very much what's going to happen.
Yeah, in terms of this Arya, Sansa, Bran reunion, before they actually reunited, I love this moment with Sansa telling Arya that Bran is home too. As Arya, she breaks out into this big smile, but realizes that something is wrong due to Sansa's face not looking quite so happy. And it was, I just felt so bad for all of them that they still can't be completely happy.
Yeah, she's breaking the news about Bran, and I guess that's why she didn't break the news about Rickon yet, because that's harder to deal with. I mean, Arya hasn't even been told about the Whites yet. She doesn't even know about Night King. I don't know, like several things she hasn't been taught yet.
Yeah, I was thinking they have a lot to catch up on, a lot.
Yoke Boy, you had some more thoughts on this about the Stark kids?
Yeah, it's quite cool to think of it in this light that Arya has her new kind of martial skills, Sansa's got new political skills, and Bran's got these prophetic skills. It would be damn fine if these three could kind of get together and coordinate their new talents for a common goal. They're now united despite their differences in purpose, and you've got the opportunity to face off against the White Walkers, and you've also got on a short timeline, the common enemy of Peter Baelish. So I wouldn't want to be Peter Baelish at this point.
So we also have, before we get to the fighting, Bran and Mira is something we need to touch on at least.
Yeah, obviously Mira says she's going home. She's going back to Greywater Watch. She has to talk to her father and share the news about Jojen and all these other things that she's gone through. She is the heir to Greywater Watch now. So that raises the question that I think a lot of us are asking is, one, will we see Greywater Watch in the future? Or, two, will we see Mira again, potentially with Howland Reed? We don't have to see Greywater Watch to see Mira and her father.
Yeah. I wonder about her going home in the books, too, whether that's going to happen or whether she'll even survive beyond the wall. There's, Mira survived in the show as the one companion, but maybe it'll be Hodor or someone else or nobody. Bran, maybe someone suggested Bran pull himself back to the wall by warging into a bear or something like that.
That'd be great.
Maybe so. There's no guarantee Mira survives But if she does, yeah, it would kind of make sense for her to go fetch Howland Reed maybe, and that's how he gets into the story. But yeah, I'm not sure.
You know, a lot of people joke about, you know, Littlefinger or Jorah being friend zoned, but I feel really bad for Mira. She didn't even get that much.
Yeah,
she wasn't even really a friend.
Yeah,
no,
that was just zone.
I just really do feel for her. She really genuinely cared about him. She put so much into this. Her brother died for him. I mean, how much of her life has she spent doing this awful experience? And I mean, she got him home, but I don't know. She must feel awful, and she has to go tell her father about this. I don't know. I really want to see that conversation. It would be great.
Yeah, it's a real shame because, you know, she's got the kind of capability to kind of humanize Bran a bit more. She's, you know, they were friends not so long ago, and now she's gone. It's a bit of a shame that she can't stick around and kind of bring him down to earth and then provide a bit of grounding for him. Bran, he's watching too much Weirnet TV, I think. He's got no time for friendship or kind of even romance, if you want to wonder about that. If he can find himself somehow, Mira would have, you know, probably made a suitable partner for him. Although she might not want to hear any of that now. He's kind of turned his back on her, and now she holds him in high regard. There's worry about Bran truly losing himself. But on the other side of the coin, you know, we've been worried about Arya previously with the same kind of thing when she was doing the faceless training. Is she going to be Arya at the end of this? So maybe the message is that you're always that person, you know, you're always yourself under the mountains of crap that's on top of it. Somewhere there's always going to be Bran, and that's what I hope for.
Yeah, I tend to think that one thing is that, you know, Bran is such a small portion of his experiences in this body now, that he has the werewood net that is, you know, taking up most of his mental space. But as he experiences things right now, he's, you know, living at Winterfell. He's talking to Sansa. He's talking to Arya. I wonder how much he'll come back to himself or start to form a new Bran, you know. And I think that was maybe slightly evidenced, or at least shows his connection with Arya in particular, and that he did put his hand on Arya's back when they hugged.
I think it's interesting, too, that Bran, I mean, you can kind of think about Bran as like someone who's just been given the internet in a world where the internet doesn't exist, except that this internet is full of complete, utter truth instead of all kinds of lies and propaganda, and you know how the internet is. I don't need to explain that. But so yeah, I can see why that would be distracting. You know, you'd want to look at everything, and everything that takes a while. I could see why that might be distracting.
We did get a super chat from Acre Frey.
Thanks, James.
And he said, "Do you think Mira will be compensated by the Starks for helping Bran through everything?" I'm doubtful, to be honest, whether the Reeds will get their just due. Unless they come back into the story, then yeah, I think that they will be held in high regard. But in terms of the show, I don't really think we'll see any of that.
Yeah, it seems like Jon and Sansa would both want to recognize, you know, that service. Talk about mention the Reeds as stout friends of House Stark.
Yeah, I would have loved to see a scene with Mira and Sansa and Jon, you know, whatever, just for Mira to have stuck around long enough for us to have seen someone else talk to her, because you would think that Sansa would want more information. Bran hasn't been very forthcoming, and Mira knows a lot of that.
Yeah.
Anyways, I wish we got that scene. I hadn't even considered a Mira Sansa scene, and now I'm sad we didn't get it.
So the Littlefinger stuff is funny because it's tricky in that we've been twice gotten hyped because of something that happened in the trailers, and both times it was the most mundane possibility. The Lyanna statue conversation turned out to be pretty mundane. Same with this whole dagger thing. Just, hey, here's the dagger. You know, it wasn't a murder or a stabbing or a plot. It was just, here's the dagger. But when Bran gives it to Arya, that actually has a huge ripple effect on what it means to me and maybe some of you guys as well about the books. First of all, hat tip to Motels on the Moon for... Oh, wait, is that Motels on the Moon or Motels on Mars? Damn it, I got them mixed up. In any case, that's who deserves credit in my mind for first pointing me towards this theory, which is the cat's paw dagger is the stand-in for Dark Sister from the books. And this makes so much sense because of where Dark Sister is likely to be, which is Bloodraven's cave. Now, so that would be how Bran has access to it. Also, Dark Sister, the name of it, has always screamed Arya since the first time that sword's name appeared, which, by the way, is not anywhere in the main 5 books. But Bloodraven undoubtedly had it, And whether or not he took it to the wall with him is a mystery, but it would certainly fit, and it's one of the most popular and most likely possibilities. So this is really brilliantly fits in there as far as a parallel. Instead of Littlefinger giving it to Bran to give to Arya, Bran just gets Dark Sister from Bloodraven in the cave and gives it to Arya. It's the same difference.
Or there's another intermediary.
Sure. Bottom line is she's armed with Valyrian steel. That's what really, I think, matters here. That's the part that really is the bottom line. It's also, by the way, sideways confirmation, or at least evidence that Bran will leave the cave in the books as well. He can't give Dark Sister to Arya if he's stuck in the cave in the north. Some people think maybe Mira will get Dark Sister instead, which is possible for sure.
It could be both, because Mira could bring it out of the cave. Bran could stay in the cave, Mira could leave the cave with Dark Sister and give it to Arya. So it could be, it's not really confirmation, but it does point to it, I think.
Or Mira could die, like we were theorizing earlier, and that could be why she doesn't get Dark Sister. So, or that's another way it could be both. Like she could die wielding it, and then it could be given to Arya later. So a lot of people want us to talk about whether this fight with Brienne is foreshadowing for her fighting a White Walker, or, as Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroot suggests, actually killing the Night King himself. Sneaking up on him, using all her, sneaky assassin skills. Maybe even the Night King wouldn't see her coming. So, yeah. I mean, there's no way to predict that for sure. I don't think there's any specific evidence that points to, yes, Arya's going to kill Night King, but I think it's a good theory. It's on the table.
Well, she's done all this training, where's it leading?
Yeah.
Where's all of this training? So she swaps a few faces on the way home. There's got to be a more of an end game eventuality for Arya with the training she's received, right, on a storytelling level. So yes. I think it's a good call.
One thing that I thought was particularly notable, and we're going to pull up a little image slideshow, 2 images, is that Arya, when she gets into this fight with Brienne, that she's fighting just like in her training sessions with Syrio Forel. You can see here on the screen her the same grin. Syrio's even smiling a little bit too, and then Arya and Brienne fighting. They're both enjoying the fun of the battle, of the duel, and happy to... I mean, I think in this case, Brienne is just really proud of her and all that.
Yeah.
But Arya is also happy to get a chance to, exercise her abilities a little bit.
Yeah, just to be powerful.
To have a worthy opponent and all of these things.
Like if you're really fast at running, a lot of people who are really fast at running enjoy running. Or if you're like really good at like playing an instrument, you play that instrument. It's the same thing. She's really good at fighting, and she loves showing off that she could beat someone larger than her.
This is mirrored even by, in both of those scenes, someone is watching her, Ned in the first case and Sansa in the second case, and looking a little unnerved by how good Arya is at this, or the significance that this has for how she might, die doing this.
Mm-hmm. Now, some comments on the realism of this scene. A lot of armchair opinions came out about this scene, including some of my own, but... You got to go to the experts. A lot of this scene is counterintuitive. So there's a gentleman by the name of Scala Gladiatoria. That's a YouTuber, and he is a swordsman expert. He is an expert on swords and sword fighting. And he had a few critical comments about this scene, but it's not what most people said. First of all, Arya blocking Brienne with sweeping parries is completely not only reasonable and rational, but it is exactly how it would be done. Brienne's longsword is blunted. You can tell by the tip. That's a crucial thing. Another important thing is that a longsword, like Brienne is wielding, it's also potentially a bastard sword given the length of the hilt, is only about 3 pounds. It's not really that heavy. Brienne's weight behind it adds a lot of power to it. But that's why a lot of people are saying, oh, she would have just chopped right through Arya's little sword. No, that's complete nonsense. She would not have chopped through Arya's sword. That is still a piece of steel. You do not chop through steel with a blunted sword, no matter just about how strong you are, especially considering those were not direct strikes to the sword. They were swept aside. The unrealistic part is Arya cutting Brienne and acting like that matters. In a real fight, Brienne would just let Arya stab her with a sword because it wouldn't be enough to cut her armor. Maybe with a piercing shot. That is a piercing sword. It has no edge whatsoever. So she wouldn't be able to do that. We saw that with Sandor, when Sandor kind of ignored her poking at her and just swatted her in the head. But this isn't a real fight. They're dueling, and so when Arya taps her on the hip, in reality, that would not have been Brienne could have ignored that if it happened in real life. But it's like a game. It's like, oh, I hit you first. It's like tag, sword tag. So anyway, this is why it pays to listen to the experts. Because if you look at that scene with, not knowing a lot about swordsmanship, counterintuitively be like, oh, this is unrealistic. But take it from the expert. The unrealistic parts were not what most people thought, and the realistic parts, or the unrealistic parts, were actually pretty realistic. So, anyway, that's my spiel there. Yolkboy, you had a take on the moves that we saw here. There was a lot to be said.
Yeah, just to kind of echo what Ash was saying, I think she started saying something, but I think there's more to it that I saw in Vanity Fair. Not only were some of the moves and positions they ended up very reminiscent, purposefully of the Syrio dueling, but there's a bit where Arya goes for the heart, which she learnt off the Hound, and there's a bit where she does a kind of kick flip, I think it's called, a flip off the floor anyway, and we saw her learning that off the Waif. So you've got the 3 stages of her teachings there: the Syrio, and then the Hound, and then the House of the Black and White. And her new skills are there to see. I thought it was really smart. That observation was in Vanity Fair.
Super chat from Craig Lewis. Arya has the training. She has the dagger. Bran knows the historical owner of the dagger and its importance. She will face the Night King. Cool, Craig. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. It may very well be leading up to that. Like, Night King is probably an incredible fighter, and maybe it takes someone like Arya to be able to handle him. All right, let's move on. So, Ashea's slideshow was pretty sweet. I guess we've gotten through a lot of it.
We've got another one.
We've got another one. We got the second slideshow.
Yeah, we've got, we mentioned how Sansa watching was like Ned watching Arya fight Syrio, but it was also reminiscent of Ned and Kat standing up there watching Bran, shooting the bow back in season 1 in this scene, Sansa, Littlefinger up there, which I don't think any of us wants to think of them like Ned and Kat.
I was about to say, that's offensive.
But it definitely makes you think of it.
Littlefinger's happy with the comparison. He's like, this is exactly where I want to be. Yes, me, the father of the Stark family. This is perfect.
But whereas Catelyn looks pretty happy there, Sansa does not look very thrilled in this scene.
Yeah. Hat tip to Purple She-Wolf for noticing the parallel to Ned getting uncomfortable. Not in this scene, but when I think it's the end of episode 3, season 1.
Yeah, it's episode 3. It's the image I had a minute ago.
Oh, okay, cool. When Ned walks in and he's hearing the sound of sword fighting in his head, it reminds him of battle and pain and suffering, and he starts to get uncomfortable, even though at first he's smiling when he sees Arya and Syrio training.
So I have a question to pose for all of us, which is, why do we think Sansa is uncomfortable here? I think it's mixed reasons, really. It's not just one. But for me, my immediate thoughts were that seeing how badass and into it Arya would be unnerving and disturbing, and remind Sansa of what Arya has been through. And I also thought immediately, as much as I didn't want to think about it, that Brienne's vow being to both of them might have actually worried Sansa a little bit, sowing some seeds of conflict. I don't think it's going that way. I hope it's not that way. But when Arya says, "You swore to serve both my mother's daughters," right? Sansa does get a little bit shifty-eyed and look over at Littlefinger, but I'm not sure if that's because she feels uncomfortable about it, or if that's because she's playing Littlefinger in some way.
I think that could be sort of ammunition for him to try to play them against each other in the same way he's done with Sansa and Jon. So now he's got something that he can try to work that way, and I don't think it'll work, but it's like we've said about Sansa and Jon. We might see a little hint of it, and then ultimately it'll probably bite him in the ass.
And of course, I see some people suggesting maybe it's just because she's thinking, oh, come on. Older brother back from the dead, battled the dead, messiah to a tribe of people. Little brother is an all-seeing wizard type. Little sister, an unstoppable fighter. And, Sansa, has to suffer through being a prisoner and be raped and all this. So, yeah, maybe there's just some, why didn't I get special powers or something, And that's not even like, whiny. It is kind of like, what the hell? Why is everyone so powerful?
When Arya came back, it's probably the most that Sansa would have ever cared for Arya, because they didn't get along, and now she's got her back, and she sees straight away she's fighting like a little psycho in the yard with someone 3 times her size, kind of thing. How would you feel if your sibling was doing that?
there was one clarification here from Matt Shackman in an interview that Kim Renfro did, who we met at Con of Thrones. Great interview, where he said that he thinks there's stages to this interaction. And at first, Sansa thinks that Arya's kidding in the crypts, and then she gets to the tree. Bran confirms this idea that she has a list, but Sansa still doesn't really know what she's done with this list or really understand her abilities. And then Arya's out there with Brienne, who's Sansa's protector, her bodyguard, the person she's relying on to keep her safe in this world. And all of a sudden, her tiny little sister is fighting Brienne to a draw at the end with a sword and knife to each other's throats. And so it causes her to quickly redefine her relationship with Arya and to wonder who exactly her little sister has become. And so he didn't point to any conflict there, more just that she's coming to terms with who Arya is.
Yeah, it definitely wasn't expected. It was, whoa. And it's just so much, it's kind of similar but different. Similar but different to Bran, you know. Yeah. So Arya stares at Littlefinger, you know, when she sees them looking down, and Littlefinger looks a little, he like tries to nod and smile, and Arya just keeps staring. And I wondered, we had some people that caught that Arya was in that scene with Tywin and Baelish back in season 2, episode 6, which I rewatched since Monday as well. And it's not particularly damning for Peter. He's certainly like, if you remember that scene, he's like trying to get a look at Arya because he kind of recognizes her. And on Monday we said that Aidan Gillen believes his character recognized Arya. He doesn't know for sure that it's been written that way. So that's clarification from Monday. We said that he knows, but it's just Aidan Gillen's interpretation of his character. He thinks he recognizes Arya from there, but it's not actually confirmed by the showrunners or the writers, so we'll have to hold off on that. In that conversation between Tywin and Peter Baelish, it's when Baelish is trying to push for the Tyrell alliance, and he's trying to argue that Tywin should consider marrying the Tyrells even though they're traitors. And he said, after you marry the Tyrells, you can punish them later after you've dealt with Robb Stark and Stannis. So it's not particularly damning, but you know, it's not good either. What do you think, Lady Gwen, about the stare?
I think this is the thing I was referring to earlier about telegraphing this, the Starks coming together and taking him down. I think we're witnessing the downward slope of Peter Baelish's arc. We've said it several times throughout this episode. He's out of his depth. He's kind of in the wrong place. Things aren't going the way they usually go for him. And given the pacing of this season, where things are happening really quickly, I would expect his downward slope to be pretty rapid.
Yeah, I think so too, because it is. But you're right; things are moving really fast. It's confusing to me though. There's a few things they need to address. I know obviously Bronzion Royce is there to take over if Littlefinger dies, and that's something we point to a lot. But politically, it's a little confusing because he's sworn to the king in the north. They can't just off him for what he's done in the past. That maybe isn't a good enough reason given the current politics and given that, they need the veil and they can't, certainly at this point, they can't be sure that if Littlefinger is off, that the veil will stick with them. I think we all think that because we know Jon Royce's character and we kind of expect it, but that doesn't mean Jon and Sansa know that or that they could, have confidence in that. So I think there's still, maybe the show will just kind of not worry about that too much, but I think ideally that would be addressed. Yolkboy, you had some thoughts as well.
Just echoing what you said about the reverse Ned of the situation. I really like that. I think that he's come up north and his tricks don't work up here. And I think it would be great if the reunification of the Starks was sealed with the downfall of Baelish, the guy who did their father over. Wouldn't that be great? I just can't think of a better story than that. But I think it'd be great to see all three of them, chip in. I've always said Sansa really should be part of the architecture of his downfall, but it'd be great if the other, it's a bonus if the other two come along and help out. Who's going to get the kill? I don't know, but I certainly hope Sansa has a moment of power over him.
Yep, we'll just have to keep on waiting. Littlefinger is still hanging on for now.
So I think we're going to move on to Dragonstone, but this is my chance to remind you guys that if you're asking questions in the chat and we're not getting to them, it's because I'm in the live stream today, so I can't grab the questions. So keep them till the end if you actually want them answered, or use Super Chat, and it will maybe distract us for a minute, but you will definitely get your question answered then.
And by the way, if you want to direct a Super Chat at a specific one of us, Lady Gwen, Yoke Boy, any of us, feel free to do that. Just include that in the comment. Okay, yeah, Dragonstone.
Yeah, first we have this scene with Dany and Missandei chatting about Grey Worm, and then, most notably to me, they then meet with Jon, who is pretty intimately acquainted with the axe that they were talking about, and in a cave, too. And maybe it's just me, but all these bend the knee and kneeling comments just make me feel like I have a really dirty mind, because I hear innuendo every single time. Every time. So...
Ash, I think I have a dirty mind too, and all through we're going to talk about the cave scene later, but I thought there was loads of innuendo there too. It's just everywhere. Maybe it's just me and you.
Oh no, it's not.
No, we all
Lady
thought
Gwen?
the same thing. As soon as he went into
good.
that cave, we all thought the same thing. But he kept his vows this time. Not those vows. The vows to the people of the North to be their king.
Yeah, for now he's only staring at her
Yeah.
good heart and not touching her. But really, this is really, as much as people hate it, or I'm not everyone hates it, some people hate it, some people are fine with it, some people just kind of resign to it. The way they're going to probably get around this whole I'm not bending the knee thing is, well, what's going to unite them without him bending the knee? A marriage. Okay. Sorry, guys. If you don't like that idea, it just makes so much sense.
I honestly thought that she was going to propose that. She turned around and said, "You know what? We'll seal the deal." And I was like, "Oh my god!"
I know. I mean, given the pacing that we talked about, I thought, okay, here we go. And then there was a shot as they walk out, and it almost looked like they were holding hands. And I've seen other people comment on that. I think it was purposeful camera shot. And I just thought, oh boy, they did it off camera.
I noticed that too, and then I looked closely and I was like, okay, they're not. Their hands just looked like that. But there was that moment, obviously, where they're all close and he grabs her arm to direct her. Like, that wasn't necessary, John. But they're trying to build it. They even said in the behind the scenes and the inside the episode, David and Dan were like, they're in this close, confined space. This heat is building.
He reaches over and moves her arm to move where the torch is. There's little touches like that. I mean, I meant that both ways. A little touch as in a little touch writing-wise and an actual physical little touch. But so that's pretty cool. It seems like it's heading that way. LML says that, hey, you got to kneel to propose. I don't. Is that traditional in Westeros?
Yeah,
But no, I like the joke anyway. It's true. Yeah. Okay, so should we talk about the drawings?
Yeah, we should. You can start us off with these. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So again, folks, we're going to have a special episode on this with LML. We're planning on that. We just started talking about it literally like 15 minutes before going live. So understandably, we haven't come up with many details yet. But there's a lot to say about this. We picked a ton of these images. Shay grabbed not just ones from this cave, but from past seasons. So you guys are in for a treat. More images than usual this time. We get a lot of. She did a lot of extra research and pulling these things out. So thanks for that. A lot of this feels like the Pact, doesn't it? This general conversation of what's happening. The Pact is described a little differently in terms of why they were getting together or some of the details, but a lot of the high points really fit, and they fit so well that it's hard to ignore. So I think maybe this is, if something like this scene happens, it might happen on the Isle of Faces in the books, or maybe if there's carvings like this, that's where they'll be.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting subject. I would preface it by saying I really do think that it more has significance in real world, symbolism than it does in world. Like, I don't really think that these mean the Isle of Faces or the Pact. I would love it to be the case, and there's evidence for it, certainly, but I'm down on the idea. But I think they do have great significance other than that. I wanted to first mention that the carvings, by the way, would be on Dragonstone. I think this is quite brilliant, actually, because that's where people would have to go to find dragonglass. They would just have to go there. That's why they wouldn't be on the Isle of Faces or some other place. They would be there, basically leading the way, trying to teach them, not doing a great job. Wasn't super clear, but it helped. It helped. So spiral shapes are known historically, just in real life and in world. We've seen them before in Game of Thrones. We've seen this image of the Godswood with a spiral. We've seen the bodies arranged in the kind of phi Greek symbol, like you can see here on the screen now. We've seen it like that. We don't know what they mean, but they certainly were mirrored again in this episode. We saw them back in the Fist of the First Men when Mance and Jon found the bodies that the White Walkers had left there. So they've repeated the spiral more than this phi symbol. But you see it there. There's the First Men, there's the spiral and the phi symbol. Then there's that little circle with a circle in it, which is what some people are theorizing is either an eclipse or is the, Isle of Faces or something like that. I'm not sure, but what we do know is that spirals are, associated with and reminiscent of the Fibonacci spiral, the golden ratio, and which is found, in nature. Aziz left the document right when I needed it, but I will move forward without that.
Sorry, we had a super chat.
Yeah, that's fine. We have 2 super chats. Can you please? Okay.
Let's just go to that and we can come back to your topic.
I'll leave the spirals and go back.
Perhaps the Green Men, from Kale Hansen, thanks Kale, perhaps the Green Men will have importance in the books, pairing children and men together again. Ariane, Aegon, Jon, Dany, Howland, Bran. Interesting. I wonder about that. I really wonder if the Green Men will ever even come into things. I wonder if they're just legendary or...
Aziz, George confirmed that the Green Men will come. He said, "Come to the fore" in the later books.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't think they'll be in the show, but the books. Yeah, he did say that.
Okay, then that's awesome.
Books,
then that makes that theory a lot more possible. And so that's really cool. Yeah, good catch there, Kale. Also from Plexa Bertrand, how can Arya kill Littlefinger without violating guest right? Would Sansa have to punish her for killing Littlefinger in that case? That's a good point.
Could be a point of conflict. Littlefinger could do something shady. If if Littlefinger leaves and isn't there anymore, then that changes things as well.
And if he violates guest right first.
Yeah, exactly. If he does something. Or, I don't, is it retroactive? He was responsible for the death of their father, the Lord of Winterfell. How does that figure? How does that figure in the guest right scheme? I don't know.
Yeah, that's tricky. You wonder about that because it's not, if it's his past crimes, I don't think that they can, kill him for that because he's been given guest rights since then. So he maybe had to do something new. I don't know. We don't know how to ask the old gods. Maybe Bran would know. Okay,
right,
sorry for that interruption. Let's get back to the spirals.
Yes, thank you. Anyway, spirals are found throughout megalithic art, very ancient art, most notably in places like Ireland and Latin America, but they've been found on every continent other than Antarctica. They're an easy thing to draw, and they're found so naturally in nature. They are obviously found naturally so often in nature that they naturally are associated with nature, in fact. And I just was really excited to write that. But I also wanted to point out just a little thing I noted, which was that... Dark Sansa's chain. You remember when she's in all black and she's got that black chain? It looks a lot like that same phi symbol that was the body shapes were in episode 1. I don't think that's on purpose, but it just cracked me up that she had this symbol of death basically there. But that same symbol, the phi symbol, which is the, again, it's like a staff between, a circle, that basically stands for the golden ratio, which is tied to the Fibonacci spiral. So those symbols are tied together in real life. I think that D&D were just like, let's choose these, real world significant symbols.
Yeah.
And I don't think they really do have symbols in the books. It's not in the books at all, so I don't think they're taking anything from it.
No, I think, I agree. I don't think there's no hints of these kind of symbols yet, anyway. And that... I think this will be expressed in a different way in the books. I think there'll be a different medium rather than carvings or runes or something that's very visual. It might be something else that George gives us, something that gets us to the same point about their origin, something that explains it, but rather than visually, he'll explain it in a different way.
Yeah, like for instance, a brand, a
vision
werewood vision that you could see it, which would be hard for them to maybe film. It's more expensive than some carvings.
Yeah, and the carvings are just awesome too. It's just a nice touch, showing that ancient bit. We love anything from history, and this is about as ancient as history can get. Usually, ancient history doesn't actually include direct evidence because it's all nothing's written down. It's just all hearsay. It's just myths and legends brought forward from the past. So direct evidence is a lot cooler. David and Dan did say in behind the episode that these symbols come from the children of the Forest. It's their symbols, and thus the walkers associate these symbols with their own creation. So that's really deep and cool.
That's interesting, isn't it? It's like a mother symbol to them because, that's their birth. They're not born, so to speak. So it's almost like a mother symbol. I was going to reiterate what Ash said. That there's no evidence to the spirals in the books. Personally speaking, I don't like to look for too much meaning in these things because maybe the meaning is that it's in your imagination, You could spend a lot of time driving yourself crazy over the spirals. You could be on a downward spiral there.
The way the show sometimes often leaves things open or unanswered gives us a lot of room for these imaginings too.
Real quick, we got a super chat from Meredith Glassberg, and she says the Theta shows up in Martin's other works, which is a great catch. I will say this is a slightly different symbol than that. Theta looks a little different, but I think the point remains that it's reminiscent of his sort of work. Yeah, I still think it's a good point, but I do think that symbol is different from the one we're seeing because the Theta has the eye in the middle and it doesn't cross over to the circle part. Anyways.
Yerk Boy, you had some more on this scene?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I really love this cave scene. I just thought, there was this romantic stuff. Maybe I'm a romantic. I don't know. I kind of like that the Dany and Jon thing, but this as a kind of plot device to show Dany, hey, this is your enemy. These things have been around. They've kind of haunted previous generations. Doing it, in this cave environment, I thought it was really original. I don't know if it's something they got from George, but I hope so because it's an awesome part of the story.
Yeah. Super chat from Jason Wells, who asked about the hieroglyphics being at Dragonstone, asked if they would be more likely to find a Winterfell crypts. He must have just joined us. We said that it actually makes a great deal of sense for it to be at Dragonstone because that's where the Dragonglass is. Anyone that wants to defeat the White Walkers will have to go to Dragonstone.
Yeah, and I think in the books it won't be so simple because there isn't just going to be one spot where there's Dragonglass. We know there's Dragonglass elsewhere, although I can see Dragonstone being like the main supply spot for Dragonglass. It could definitely work that way. So, but as far as the crypts go, I mean, there could be some carvings down there. The crypts are really old. They're not as old maybe as the original White Walkers, but they probably are. They could be that old. Maybe the deepest levels of the crypts. Because apparently... Go ahead, Lady Gwen.
There could be Dragonglass down there. If you think about, Winterfell being on the hot springs, that could be a volcanic site.
Oh.
Anciently, speaking in way back, it was. We don't know. Like you were saying, we don't know what's way down below.
Yeah.
Other than hot springs.
That's interesting. Okay, so shall we move on a little bit, talking a little more about Dany and Jon?
Yeah. We have a few scenes at Dragonstone with them. In one of them, I thought it was a great line where where Dany says to Jon, "Isn't their survival more important than your pride?" Two things. One, Jon could have just said the exact same thing to Dany. Like, it's her pride just as much as his one. But also, that's what Jon said to Mance.
Yep. And... Joe Buckley points out that this is leading towards her House of the Undying vision. She's going to keep being this stubborn until she's inches from the Iron Throne. And then maybe, like Stannis, she'll realize that she's got to save the kingdom to win the throne, not the other way around. It may looking a lot like that sort of parallel, even right down to being at Dragonstone. So I think that's a really good fit. And Dany's getting a little frustrated because of the news she gets about Casterly Rock and Tyrion's, advice not going so well. And she brings up maybe blaming him for being too soft on his family, which is going to come up later, especially with maybe Jaime being in captivity. And Jon and Dany both... First of all, Jon tells Dany why people follow her. He reminds her that she's done the impossible and that people think that maybe she can continue to do the impossible, and that is why people follow her. It's not because of her birthright. It's not because of I was born to rule, Mm-hmm. And both of them get this experience from the other side. Jon and Davos are talking to Missandei, and Missandei is like, yeah, she's the best. Missandei and the Dothraki are fantastic salesmen for why Dany is awesome, because they are living it. They're like, we've experienced, she's a worthy leader, and let me tell you why, because she'll let us leave, she'll do this, she's that, blah, blah, blah. She's not what you think she is. And I think that Dany is sort of learning the same thing. She doesn't have Jon's people to talk to, but Davos was kind of saying those same things about Jon. And so maybe Dany needs to hear that from other people. Like Tyrion. I mean, Tyrion has done some of that, but there's too many people. She hasn't maybe heard it from enough people yet. So Missandei, Jon, and Davos, we got some humor in here, don't we?
Yeah, we got this one callback, this recurring joke that I think is my favorite in the whole show, probably. It's Fewer from season 2 originally, when Stannis corrects Davos, and then from season 5 when Stannis just kind of mutters it to himself. No one really listens to him say it at all. We got a super chat real quick from Craig Lewis.
Thanks, Craig.
Yeah, thank you. Jon took Dany by the forearm. That implies intimacy. A date brushing lint off your shoulder. Besides, who gets away with touching the queen? Now, definitely, it was definitely notable, I think. And I think that's another great point, that who gets away with touching the queen, that it was even more forward than we were thinking.
Yeah.
So moving on, Davos seems to have an interest in Missandei, and a lot of people have been joking about it being romantic or him flirting, and I find that funny because he has a wife that we never see. But personally, I think it's more in the vein of his fondness for Shireen, which makes these interactions actually really sad to me.
Yeah.
And someone in the chat a while ago, not today, mentioned the idea that maybe Davos had all along wished that he had a daughter because he had all sons, and so that's maybe also part of why he had connected with Shireen in the first place and with Missandei, and even he was smiling at little Lyanna Mormont and all that. So I think he just has a soft spot for children and little girls in particular, but I don't think that he's flirting necessarily.
That actually might play out better in the books if it goes at all like this, because Missandei is actually a child in the books,
Yeah,
where
that's a great
she's
point.
kind of an adult here. I mean, she's young, nowhere near Davos's age, but Missandei is like 11 now.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even
Right.
consider that. That's awesome.
I wonder if that'll go that way. We can hope.
Lady Gwyn had some thoughts,
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, well, I thought very much along the lines of what you were saying, and also with the fact that they're on Dragonstone. He lived there. That's where his friendship with Shireen was formed. So he's probably feeling a lot of. He's got a lot of feels. I'm sure there's nostalgia and all kinds
Yeah.
of stuff going on. So.
Yeah. And another notable thing I think in this little sequence was Missandei's knowledge or lack of knowledge about bastards. Personally, I feel like she should know what bastards are, given her knowledge and her position. So I'm choosing for myself just to believe that she wanted to see Jon's reaction, that she was pretending she didn't know.
I'm with you. I think she's humoring them and just
Yeah.
playing nice and
Yeah. I thought Davos' reaction was hilarious. Liberating.
Yeah.
Why that struck me as so funny. I do think that this could be an interesting setup, or maybe commentary, if the show just shows us Jon as Rhaegar's bastard, which of course is hotly debated in book canon, but I really
Yes.
doubt the show is gonna be that subtle. They will not have time for starters, so they're just gonna go with this straight up, Jon's a royal bastard. So they've introduced this theme that bastardy doesn't mean anything, which, given the Gendry thread that we're going to be talking about, is another interest. It's just another interesting connection. With
Yeah,
that theme.
I'm glad you mentioned Gendry, because I want to throw that out there too. If he, no matter what capacity he shows up again, he is a similar status to Jon in terms of a bastard son of a king, and a king that has no other descendants. So that's the whole bringing up this bastard commentary in general, I think, is some interesting foreshadowing that could have multiple applications. How about Davos talking to Dany and Jon? I already mentioned the good heart comment.
Yeah. But King Snow. No, that doesn't sound right. King Jon?
That's so good. They've really done a great job of mixing in humor with all these really meaningful scenes on Dragonstone. It's been very good. I'm real happy with it.
We got a $2, well, not dollars, but we got a $2 super chat from Ghost Go 5T, but I don't see a question from you. If you get it in there, I'll try to catch it. Maybe they just wanted to say thank you.
All right. Okay, so Theon's return is next on the docket. And it's certainly notable that when Jon moves to grab him, Theon doesn't bat an eye. He's like, yeah, I deserve it. You know, he doesn't fight back at all. And this is tricky because trying to figure out how to rectify this story with the books. I think one of the main things that's going on with the Greyjoy story in the books is the story of Torgon the Latecomer, who was... There's legal precedent in the Iron Islands for someone who had a claim to the throne that wasn't there for the King's Moot. And that is something that Asha thinks about a lot. And she's thinking of Theon, obviously, because she was there at the King's Moot, but Theon wasn't. So it's pretty widely believed that Theon or his bastard child will maybe rule the Iron Islands when it's all said and done. And that means Theon has to survive if the book's going to do, or if the show's going to go that same route, which maybe they don't need Yara, which has led us to worry about her. But as long as she's still alive, there's a chance. And it seems pretty clear that this is what Theon's arc is going to be. He's going to maybe be the guy to go after Euron, or at least to rescue Yara from Euron. Whether it works or not, I don't know. But it's interesting because both Yara and Theon are in captivity at Stannis' hands at the point we are in the books. And so it's kind of hard to see how they get from captivity with Stannis to working for Dany with Yara being a captive of Euron. I mean, it's hard to unpack all that and see how it relates, but I think a lot of it will, at least some of the high points. They also kind of covered this a little briefly before, but they talked about how Dany does still have plenty of ships, and that actually does make sense. She hasn't sent her Dothraki anywhere until now, and, well, that's where all the ships were. Most of the ships that came over were hauling Dothraki, and most of those didn't get used at any other point. They weren't with the Ironborn, they weren't with hauling the Unsullied, so that actually works. So I think for now, Theon, we're just kind of waiting. We don't know what's going on yet, but...
I do think it's notable that we keep seeing Pike in the opening credits. I think it could just be to remind us of this Greyjoy presence on the main stage, but it also makes me wonder if we're going to see it eventually. I think it's possible, for sure.
Yeah, do you guys have any takes on that? What was your reaction, your general reaction to Theon showing up there?
Well, it's pretty much what, I mean, you know, John's reaction, I think, was pretty much what I expected. Still debating where I think Theon's arc is going to go, but I do like the idea that, in the show anyways, that he might lead a raid on Pike, as, like, Yara went to the Dreadfort trying to rescue Theon, which also doesn't happen in the books. Euron was last seen at Casterly Rock, which is really just a hop, skip, and a jump away from the Iron Islands. So
yeah, maybe he'll swing by on the way home.
Broader. Yeah. So.
Drop Yara off and then go somewhere else, and that's the chance to... That's Theon's chance, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I've got to say that Alfie Allen done Theon so well. I mean, all through the Reek days, he was really good, and he's still nailing it. It was such a small part on Sunday's episode, but I really got the sense of who Theon was there with his acting.
Mm-hmm.
We got our clarification from Ghost, who did a super chat. We're trying to... Here.
Yeah. They said, do you think there's a double standard when it comes to women killing in the show, or even women scheming, whether it's Dany's battle strategy or Sansa's scheming? Now, I'm not sure if your question is referring to on a meta level, the fandom, or in world. In world, obviously, there is a double standard, I would say. In terms of, I would even guess that it even comes into play with Daenerys. Like, one, they do want her to be safe, and she is really important, but I would also guess that the fact that she's a woman actually is influencing their council a little bit. And well, it should in some cases. I mean, she didn't even wear armor on the battlefield, so I don't know. But,
they didn't want her risking herself. They may not have said that if it was, you know, Robert Baratheon in his prime. Of course, they wouldn't have been able to tell Robert, no, you can't fight. That would never have worked. But
so, you know, in world it would. Out of world, in real life, I think definitely. I think we would all agree with that they're judged differently.
She also has no heir, and she might be the only one to be able to ride dragons. So I don't think we can compare the value of her to her troops.
That's true.
You know, like Robb Stark when Ned was alive. You know, there's a difference.
That's a good point. So it looks like we have well over 700 people watching right now. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate the turnout. And we're still pretty far from the 6K goal. 6K, if we get 6,000
Hey, if we get
live watchers.
1,000, Sean said he would record himself dancing.
If we get 6,000, we will do a 24-hour live stream.
Yes.
We're still pretty far from that. That's why we said it's so high, because, damn, that will be hard. But we'll do it. If y'all get us there, we'll do it. So let's take care of some mid-roll stuff now that we're roughly halfway through. As usual, we will go beyond 2 hours to continue answering questions, but not all those questions will make the final cut of the podcast. So keep that in mind. First of all, I want to give a shout out to our Ironborn captains on Patreon. And that begins with Kathleen the Ruthless, captain of the Night Terror, Black Matos Stormrider, captain of the Rusted Hinge, Rebea, Lady of Waves, captain of the Iron Shadowcat, Tusk Shield, breaker captain of Kraken's Fury, Oisin the Wanderer, captain of Naga's Living Flame, Sir Selvus Redblade of White Harbor, captain of Trident of the North, Sir Chucklaws, captain of the Drummond Nightblood, destroyer of evil, Dean Crowseye of House Seaworth, captain of Silence, Mad Zack, captain of the Red Wake, and Heron Burntbeard, captain of Smoking Narwhal. What's that narwhal smoking? Nah. We also shout out to our Blood Rider Koholkoi called Sunpiercer, who sent a grayscale infected arrow at Galadon Longscar, who is slowly suffering from that. Also, a shout out to John of Knoxville, Prince of Sunsphere, wielder of the twin Valyrian steel daggers, Viper's Fangs. Now, this is cool. Some of this may have slid under the radar, but the Mystery Knight graphic novel is out.
Yes, with art by Mike Miller, and of course we've had the first two in the series out in graphic novel form for quite a few years, but the Mystery Knight just came out, on the 8th, yesterday. So definitely go check that out. You can get it on Kindle format, or you can order it on our website, hardcover, whatever you prefer. I have it on digital version. Definitely hardcover. Seeing it in front of you is better. I couldn't wait, and I just wanted it in front of me. And so I've been tweeting little screen caps from it that I think are funny, because sometimes they're just hilarious. The artwork really is.
Yeah, and we can see Bloodraven and all these other guys in their full battle gear and everything. Just really cool. Just seeing some of these characters come to life, even in animated version, is awesome, especially when there's little of them elsewhere.
Yeah.
So highly recommend you can get that. You can we should have a link to that up on our website shortly. I don't think it's there yet, but not long after this episode is out, we'll have a link for that. And you go to historyofwesteros.com and you should be able to find that.
Doesn't Bloodraven look amazing in the graphic novel?
Yeah, he does. He looks great. I love his eye patch that they gave him. And
he looks very kind of slick and on the ball and just what you'd expect.
I also want to point out that Glendon Ball, Fireball's bastard, looks really awful. I mean, not awful in a good way. He just looks no one would want to follow him, and everyone would make fun of him based on how he looks.
I'm telling you, he's going to join the Aegon's Kingsguard along with Dunk. That's his place.
So yeah, check that out.
Okay, so let's go to the Field of Fire. They call it the loot train
attack,
raid, which is maybe not the best name. I prefer the Field of Fire.
Well, yeah, I don't know. There's not really much loot there, right then.
Yeah, the loot mostly got away. The food train, maybe they should call it. So the scene kind of starts, or they set the stage with Bronn being unhappy with the fact that Lannisters aren't paying their debts. They owe him a castle.
Yep. Jaime does give him a big sack of gold, but then of course once the battle gets going, Bronn has to leave his money, which was a brilliant moment where in just a split second, in a moment, he makes the decision that he can't go for the gold, which is smart, but I think also has greater meaning for him. But it shows that ultimately I think that Bronn is gonna survive. He's saving himself there, as much as we'll talk about whether people should have died or could have died in this scene. I think that it shows that he's looking out for himself and his neck right there.
Absolutely.
But he needs more loot from this, because if Jaime were to die there, who would give Bronn his just due? No one. He would have been screwed.
Yeah, absolutely. So then we have a conversation with Dickon, Jaime, and Bronn, and there's been a lot of jokes about, hopefully, Bronn laughs at the name Dickon. Dickon probably shouldn't go anywhere near Theon or Grey Worm or Varys. They'll just... His very name is mocking them, because they're all dick off. And I couldn't help myself.
There's a character called Dickon Manwoody in the books.
Yep, there sure is. Thanks for that, George.
Yeah, probably the best name in the books too.
So this scene actually, despite the humor, there was a lot of interesting stuff in it. It had callbacks to season 1 with Robert's first kill conversation, which we detailed on Monday. But in general, it just talks about the horrors of battle, and particularly civil war. You know, Dickon talking about having to fight his friends is pretty harsh. And then Tyrion lives that, you know, in this scene. Dickon's talking about it, so he lived it, but then we see it firsthand with Tyrion having to see that. And I couldn't find a specific, you know, they don't tell you about the stench thing in the books. It probably is in there somewhere, but I couldn't find it specifically couched in the same language. But George, of course, talks about the horrors of battle and war all over the place. It's everywhere. So it's a callback to a lot of George's themes about, you know, they go off to war thinking that it's going to be glorious and wonderful, and then there's this. You know, well, this is extreme even for war, but still, wow. Yeah. And one thing I want to relate to maybe a thing is Randall Tarley's harshness, because we already know that it's very likely Randall Tarley will be among the leaders of those who flip to Aegon VI in the books. Is his harshness going to reflect poorly on Aegon's leadership, or is that going to maybe be a factor? Maybe some of Aegon's commanders. I mean, the Gold Company aren't exactly nice guys, you know. So Aegon VI may be faced with a lot of his army being, you know, a problem for the people, the civilian population, which Dany will have the same problem too, given all the R'hllor and Dothraki and everything. So I think that could be a big part of the book theme, is both these factions have issues with their own soldiers. So the surprise attack, the way they built the sound up was really cool. This was certainly one of the things I was talking about at the beginning, is one of the things great things they did with sound and then music. So, and Lady Gwen, you noticed something here too.
Before the sound built with the Dothraki coming, it completely ended. All sound, you know, Jaime and Bronn are talking, and there were birds, there's background noise, and it just all went silent. You could hear the birds stop singing. And it was just very eerie, and that's how they knew something was wrong. And I interpreted the birds stopping, you know, as the dragons were, Dragon is coming.
Yeah, Dragon. Not enough budget for all three. No.
But still probably enough to make all the birds go, wow, we better hide from this.
Yikes. Yeah, the birds are like, no thanks.
That's a heck of a big flying predator.
So let's detail a little of the tactics in the battle. Let's do some logistics here. Shay has got an awesome map shot for us. This is what you're seeing the arrows pointing at are the Blackwater Rush. That's the river that runs alongside King's Landing. That's the same river that Stannis sailed his ships up in as part of his assault on King's Landing. Randall Tarley mentions that this is where they're near. He says, we've got to get the rest of the column over Blackwater Rush by nightfall. So that's pretty clearly an indication of where they are. Now look at how close that is to the shoreline. So it's really not hard to see how Dany could have snuck up on them. Some people are wondering how they could have been caught so off guard. But if you see where the Rose Road is, it's not far from the shore. And Daenerys has a lot better vision than any of Jaime's scouts would have, because she can go high up in the air and watch from Drogon. And anyone else looking from far away is not going to think, oh, that's a dragon. No, it's going to be so far away, they'll probably just think it's an eagle or some sort of bird or hawk or vulture or something in the sky. They won't be able to tell it's a dragon. Second of all, let's pretend that Jaime had scouts out there. How come there was no warning? Well, the Dothraki have faster horses, and their guys shoot bows from horseback, whereas the Westerosi do not. So in terms of scout versus scout, it's not even close to a contest. Dany should have a massive advantage in terms of these scouting small encounters, because the Lannisters and the Tyrells have nowhere near the talent and training and experience of growing up in the saddle and learning to fight like this. So, Yoke Boy, you had some thoughts on this as well. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's back up. We have a super chat. Let's do that first.
I was going to save it for after, but all right. From Jacob Victor, he said, just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of both of you guys. Keep up the good work. Quick shout out to Tyrion's version of Gandalf's famous quote, "Fly, you fools," instead of "Flee, you fucking idiot."
Yeah.
That's a good one.
I noticed that, yeah.
Especially with the other Lord of the Rings Hobbit parallels with Bronn and shooting down the dragon and all that. So, yep, it's cool. Some good homages there. George R. R. Martin, big fan of J.R. Tolkien. He calls him the original, the master. So, definitely some homages there. Young boy, what
Yes.
about?
Yeah, speaking of homages, it struck. I'm not the only one to notice this, obviously, but it struck me that this was kind of homage to, the tropes of Western movies. The setting and environs were kind of reminiscent of a Western prairie type feel. I thought, with the dry land and the shrubbery, and the loot train, as it's called, needing to be derailed, kind of thing. That's another Western kind of trope before it gets to its destination. There was a standoff, and there was also this surprise attack by the Dothraki coming over the hill, which to me reminded me of kind of American Indian attack in the Western context. So I think the fact that HBO have actually named it the Loot Train, is very telling of the influence of Western movies here.
Yeah, definitely. Beforehand, we'd had someone comment on one of our videos saying this is going to be like Cowboys and Indians, and then in the behind-the-scenes look at the Loot Train attack, they called it Cowboys and Indians, so they definitely were thinking of that for sure.
More Westworld jokes, Westeros world jokes. Yep.
But one of the great things about this, in addition to seeing Drogon in action, was seeing the Dothraki in action, actually fighting. And we had this outstanding standing on horses action.
Outstanding.
Right here with the Dothraki, which was really impressive. And the behind the scenes, they talked about, you should just watch it if you hadn't, it's like 14 minutes, but they talked about how they actually did that. They constructed these special saddles for them to put their feet into, which made me wonder if the Dothraki have some, interest in tech maybe like that, like some special saddles in World or something like that. But they all really did that, which is so impressive, so impressive. But also their screaming was pretty great too.
Yeah, the screamers, I love that touch. It added to the tension, especially because Drogon then added his much bigger, louder scream. It's coming. It was like they were the chorus building up, and then he's the soloist, coming out to. It's like an orchestra, and then he comes out there. Love it.
Yeah, I love that one tracking shot of Bronn trying to get to the Scorpion, and then there's Drogon flying above. It just follows him, from in front of Bronn, and it was a really great cinematic moment, and how gray and orange and red everything is in that moment. It was really stunning.
Yeah, it was so cool. What was everyone's favorite moment from the battle? Do you guys have a favorite moment from the battle, or favorite shot, or just favorite aspect of it? Whoever's ready can go first.
I said mine right there. I would say it's the awesome tracking shot, and then Bronn getting to the Scorpion, and him, just the wind in his hair or whatever. It was all stunning.
Yeah.
I think we'll talk about mine in a minute or two, but I think that this Jamie with the lance at the end, I thought was just a great shot.
Okay, I think mine. I do. I like all of yours. Mine's are kind of like Ash's. I like Bronn on the Scorpion when he's aiming, and it really reminded me of Jaws. When he's waiting for things, and he's kind of got one shot left, and he's got to do it, and bam. Yeah, I thought that was really good. I loved it so much. I was on Bronn's side, and I really wanted Drogon to die so bad.
Yeah.
I said that on Twitter, and everybody hated me.
I saw your tweet about that. That was funny.
In real life, I'm down on dragons for sure. Like, dragons shouldn't exist. They're just nuclear weapons. We shouldn't have them. But I didn't want Drogon to die in that moment in particular as much as I wanted. I was happy Bronn got a shot in. That's all he really needed, to say he shot a dragon down. That's pretty impressive. But moving on from that, there was another quote from this interview that Kim Renfro did with Matt Shackman, where they cited, Shackman cited Apocalypse Now as inspiration for this sequence, and that it has this tremendous battle between guys in a helicopter and villagers down below, and it shifts perspectives, and it's all about the horrors of war. And I thought that was communicated really well. I thought that was a great homage, inspiration that they used.
There was a great comment in the chat just now. Someone says, who did it better? With pinning an opponent to the wall? Was it Bronn spearing that Dothraki, or Grey Worm spearing that Lannister at Casterly Rock? Decide amongst yourselves. It's a tough call. Grey Worm required more of his own strength, but Bronn was a little trickier, a little sneakier. So we've got a really hilarious thing that Ashea has prepared for us here.
Yes, I was doing my screen capping, as I do for each of these and for other things, and I was going through it backwards, and I was struck by what a nice creature Drogon is to clean up for everyone here. I mean, it's
Suck up
pretty
all those
magical,
flames.
right? He just sucks it all up. I don't know.
Inhale
I think we give him a bad rep. I bet you feel bad. I bet you're eating your words now, Yolk Boy. You can't see it, but you'll see later that Drogon is doing a fine job.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking
Anyway,
about.
that's enough of that.
We weren't watching the same battle, apparently.
Does Bronn pull out the spear from Drogon when you put it in the river?
Yes,
Oh,
exactly.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
Bronn is a dragon doctor.
I know it's silly, but it cracked me up. But a less silly shot, I think the most popular shot from the episode was this shot of Drogon from the side burning things.
Yeah.
Which I thought was
Ooh.
stunning. It would have been my favorite shot from the episode, except it drove me crazy that they didn't get all the way across the screen. I wanted Drogon to get all the way across. It just for my own like OCD, my own persnicketyness. I wanted it, but it was stunning. And seeing behind the scenes, seeing how they actually created that and how they actually had these real, pyrotechnics, how they had explosions going on and with lighting people on fire. I was even more impressed when I rewatched it.
Yeah, it's harder to complain about the battle after you've watched the making of, because you realize just the overwhelming scope of effort and the number of different people who are really good at what they do, who have had careers leading up to this point to show off their expertise. And yeah, it's harder to criticize things when you see all the work that goes into it.
I will say there's something that I will still criticize that honestly knocked this down like a solid point for me. Like I've tried to reconcile myself to it, but it really drives me crazy. This is a fantasy world with dragons and all that. And Daenerys has ridden Drogon before without a saddle, but this time Drogon fell from the sky and she held on without a saddle, which is just crazy to me. There's other things I can let go of, but that right there, I don't know. I still just am haunted by the fact that it was the case.
My answer came up.
Yeah.
My explanation for it, which is just something I made up. Who knows? But maybe Drogon's, the little wing flaps, the little neck flaps that he has, that maybe Dany can really wedge her feet deep in there.
And her hands.
Some crevice in there.
Yeah.
No,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't really have an answer for that.
There is not precedent for this, but there's something that relates to this in the book, specifically from The Dance of the Dragons and The Princess and the Queen, in which there's this scene where Daemon and Aemon One Eye get into an altercation, and Daemon doesn't do up his chains, and Aemon does, and it ends up, screwing over Aemon. It means his death ultimately, but still, Daemon would have had, I think, a saddle in addition to chains. He just didn't do his chains.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if either of you, Lady Gwyn or York Boy, want to read this quote. We forgot to ask you if you wanted to, with your lovely voices.
Yes, Lady Gwyn, please.
I'll read it. Okay. Well, here it is from The Princess and the Queen. The young prince kissed his woman and vaulted lightly onto Vhagar, taking care to fasten the 4 short chains between belt and saddle. Daemon left his own chains dangling. Caraxes hissed again, filling the air with flame, and Vhagar answered with a roar. As one, the 2 dragons leapt into the sky.
Yeah. So again, picture, right? We already saw one dragon. Like, that must be so much more epic. And like, Daemon leaps from one dragon to another. And
See why we have to do this Dance of the Dragons podcast with Radio Westeros? Because we got to do stuff like that. That's just so cool. And again, I'll repeat what I said at the beginning. Look at that shot of the shots that Shay has shown. Picture 18 of those things flying around, just doing battle. Like, you can't imagine. I can't imagine.
I will say I've seen dragons and stuff before, but I was never really like Team Dragon. Dragons are awesome. I want to see more dragons flying around. But after this, I have more of an idea of how epic it really would be to see the Dance of the Dragons. I had always been down on it. I was like, it's not worth the waste of the budget to me. And I still kind of feel like that. I don't want no one like come after me for that. But I'd rather see the budget spent on so many more things than dragons. But this convinced me a little bit.
Yeah, and also it's a reminder of how Aegon the Conqueror dealt with things. He didn't want to just burn everyone up either. In some cases, he kind of had to, but it was never his first resort either. And we're kind of seeing that with Dany, and how she approached this war at first, or at least how her counselors wanted her to approach this war at first. And that's why this battle has so many ramifications, even if we don't see anything else like it again. I think we might, but everyone's going to get the message now. everyone was like us. We all kind of imagine dragon battles and like, oh, it's going to be something. But actually seeing it, even though this is just TV, actually seeing it is like, whoa, this changes our perspective on dragons. Like Ashaya just said, it moved the needle for her. Imagine how it moves the needle for Bronn or Randall Tarley or just the average Lannister soldier.
I mean, those Lannister soldiers are heroes. They were like incredible. It is more fantastical than the dragon itself that they would not move. They would keep holding the line there. It was crazy to me, but they did it.
Yeah, and they just, the way Dany's strategy was, she wasn't targeting them too much. She certainly burned plenty of soldiers, but she was mostly targeting the loot train, which also served to trap them. It was like a wall of fire that the column couldn't run away from. They could either run into the Dothraki or into the flame wall that Dany created behind her. And that's part of why it's similar to the Field of Fire in a lot of ways, is because Aegon started burning the brush fire on either side of the battlefield so that his smaller force couldn't be outflanked by the larger combined strength of the Reach and the Rock. And it was done for, it's done for a different reason here, but, the same tactic is there. And speaking of all this destruction, Tyrion is the guy who is most lamenting all this, right? Dany's almost exulting in it. She's, like, yeah, I'm powerful.
She's not up close and personal right away either.
Exactly. So Tyrion has a lot of experience with this. He not only saw men burning and screaming based on his own plans at the Blackwater, but he saw it himself back in the Greyjoy Rebellion when Euron sailed in and burned Lannister fleet, something that Tyrion mentions back in season 1 when he's jawing with Theon. So, Yoke Boy, what do you think? What do you think about Tyrion?
Yeah, on the subject of Tyrion, Tyrion's got friends on the other side. Like you said, he's got kind of mixed feelings about things. In this scene, we saw Dickon Tarley, and he was talking about him having friends on the other side. Really, that was kind of underscoring what was going on for Tyrion. He must be really conflicted. Dickon was a stage setter for what Tyrion goes on to witness, and really in the story we do see quite a fair amount of people like switching sides and kind of going native and things like that, which Tyrion must be feeling right now. And you think of like Jon Snow during the Night's Watch, and then he goes over to the wildlings, brings them south. There's a fair amount of that kind of switching up going on.
Yeah, it's really something. I mean, Joe Buckley points out that Tyrion also witnessed something like this in Meereen with Dany burning the slaver ships, but that's just so different, right? This is, he says that...
They see Meereen and Blackwater, and...
Yeah, they're both invading enemies, where this time they're kind of the aggressor, and it's... And in neither case is these, people that Tyrion knows personally. He probably knows a few of those soldiers or officers, or at least maybe knew them in a, prior. And of course, Jaime and Bronn, he knows them very well. And in general, yeah, it's just like fighting your family. He's had all these plans, but seeing it in reality, fighting your family on paper is a lot harder to do than in reality. What do you think? So Lady Gwen, you noticed that even back in a Game of Thrones, Tyrion mentions the Field of Fire himself.
Yeah, the first we ever hear about the Field of Fire, and probably the only thing we knew about it for ages, is going all the way back to Tyrion's thinking about dragons back in Game of Thrones. He thinks his own remote ancestor, King Loren of the Rock, had tried to stand against the fire when he joined with King Mern of the Reach to oppose the Targaryen conquest. Then he goes on to describe the battle in pretty great detail, and he concludes, near 4,000 men had burned that day, among them King Mern of the Reach. King Loren had escaped and lived long enough to surrender, pledge his fealty to the Targaryens, and beget a son, for which Tyrion was duly grateful. So typical Tyrion, a little bit of humor there, but really underlining that he's kind of seeing a chapter out of his own history unfold right in front of him.
And that's a really general rule of thumb. If you see something kind of major or like a reference like that in someone's first chapter ever, that's almost certainly foreshadowing, because George himself, as we know, he put a lot of foreshadowing for the long-term foreshadowing in Game of Thrones. Some of these things have changed. Like, he originally foreshadowed Jaime being king, which is now, in retrospect, false foreshadowing. But he did intend it at the time that he wrote it. So George was probably thinking about a new Field of Fire as far back as Tyrion's first chapter, or, before he even started writing the book. So I do think that hints at Tyrion witnessing an event like this in the books. and him having maybe similar. It might not.
No, does it? I was going to say, does it hint at something else? Because I was struck by the pledges fealty to the Targaryens. I mean, we already have Tyrion, but what struck me is he's witnessing Jaime, kind of standing in for King Lord of the Rock here in this scene.
Yeah.
Jaime's gonna have a son, a living one.
Yeah, I was surprised that none of the Tarleys, neither of the Tarleys apparently died. They didn't. They usually show it if they do, and there was no evidence of them of that. Maybe we'll see Randall Tarley's smoking body at the beginning of the next episode.
Or he's like so horribly burned, he was just out of the blast, or I don't know, maybe.
But that's really interesting. So yeah, I'll have to keep an eye on how these parallels line up. So we got Cooper and Darnell captured again, apparently. It's funny that I say that, because I don't think anyone is buying for even a second that Jaime is going to die. I mean, not in the water. He may die. He probably dies eventually, but he's not going to drown here. I don't think
Dany's going to kill him here.
Yeah.
Like, I guess it's possible. It's more possible than him drowning there, but I really don't think so. We all think he has a larger story to tell with Cersei.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this is one of my few complaints about the battle. No one important seemed to have died. Although, to be fair, there's not a lot of important characters in the battle. There was and Dany wasn't in any danger, and much danger, and Tyrion wasn't in any danger at all, really. But still, there's a lot of near misses, and Jaime's thing was it was cool that he charged Dany. I like that he did that. But the being tackled off the horse is a little, I don't know. I wasn't excited about that. And it's a double near-miss death that's not going to amount to anything. But still, there is a lot of tension here. The tension is what's going to happen next. What's going to happen with Jaime in captivity. And that's the foreshadowing. That's the part I care about. So there is a cliffhanger of sorts. It's just not Jaime's death. What do you think, Lady Gwen?
Well, I think, and I've seen a lot of people thinking that, saying the same thing, that I think the weakness in the scene was that someone should have died. Someone with a name should have died. In my opinion, it should have been Bronn. I think it would have been a fitting end to his arc. He had that symbolic loss of his gold. Jaime promised him a castle when this war is over. So I just thought it would have. And could we leave it open that possibly Bronn did die? I mean, he was kind of...
I think even if Bronn, next episode we find out Bronn's dead, I feel the same way that he should have died in that episode. There should have been a cost for the viewer, because there's certainly a cost for these unnamed soldiers burning to death, but there was no real feels like, oh, I've just lost something on that battlefield.
Wait, are you kidding? We just lost Major League pitcher Noah Syndergaard.
Sorry, Noah.
Ed Sheeran might have been in there, too.
For all we know. He was Lannister soldier, I suppose. We'll go with that.
How could you say we didn't lose anyone?
There was a nice little symmetry, I thought, in the last episode, Jaime learning from his mistakes at the Whispering Wood. And yet here he ends up, we assume, because we're not falling for this Jaime falling into the water, being captured again, as happened at the end of the Battle of Whispering Wood. So did he not, kind of didn't learn quite enough from his mistakes? Or is there no, this was unavoidable? Speaking of which, and I mentioned it a couple minutes ago, that Jaime charging at Dany there, I thought was really just an awesome conclusion. I was really struck by the bravery, the futility of it all, reminded by, Jaime's reputation as a fearless knight, and he's galloping straight at a fire-breathing dragon it doesn't seem to be afraid at all. He doesn't hesitate. And then there's his history, killing Dany's father to save people from a fiery tyrant. So is that his perception that he's just trying to, do the same thing, history over again?
That makes a lot of sense. Joe Buckley wanted us to point out that he wrote an essay on Tower of the Hand this week that he talks about how Jaime probably sees a lot of Aerys and Dany, especially because he doesn't know her. And maybe he'll be able to back off on that if he gets a chance, in captivity. Maybe Tyrion tells her. Maybe he gets to hear from people who love Dany, like the same kind of thing that Jon was told to do. Walk amongst her people and hear why they will follow her. Maybe that will have Jaime turning the other way. Maybe he gets that chance, Dany is well aware of how awful her father was. So that's something. That's something that maybe keeps Jaime alive. Plus, there's Tyrion would argue for it. he would argue maybe on a personal level, which Dany might reject because she already accused him of being too soft on his family. But Jaime's a valuable hostage, and that is true regardless of Tyrion's personal feelings. Our friend Drew Hinkus wants us to know, or wants us to discuss the possibility of maybe Tyrion returning the favor that Jaime gave him and letting him free.
They certainly parted on good terms.
Yeah, the problem is now that Tywin is in the mix. Like, Jaime never believed that Tyrion killed Joffrey, but he knows he killed Tywin. And we don't know what his reaction will be to that. You guys have any thoughts on how Dany will react, either how Dany will react to Jaime or how Jaime may or may not change his feelings about Tyrion and or Dany?
Well, I think it's probably pretty important that you saw that Olenna told Jaime the truth.
Yeah.
You know, he's only just now learned that, you know, that Tyrion did not kill Joffrey.
No, he knew that already. He knew that already.
He knew that already?
Yeah, he knew that
We
already.
got mixed up on too.
We all got mixed up on that, like, before when it happened. But he knew
books,
he never at any point believed that Tyrion did it.
Because it's not the books.
Yeah, that was one of our crossovers.
But yeah, they also like obviously they don't have this conflict at all between them because there's no Shay. I mean, there's not Shay. There's no Tysha stuff either.
Yeah,
so.
and Jaime's of course not going to get to tell Cersei now this either. Not that he.
Yeah.
I mean, he still will get to. Probably, I think he'll still get to tell Cersei when he gets back.
Yeah, he might. He might if he gets out and go. Yeah, if they let him go or flip him to their side. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that Tyrion will let Jaime lose. Maybe, I mean, be a nice little symmetry, and the show does like to do things like that. But I think you made the good point that he knows he's going to know how valuable Jaime is to that, or keeping Jaime away from Cersei is.
Yeah, I think he knows. That point, and if he doesn't have that equity with Dany, she's still mad at him.
The consequences of Jaime letting Tyrion offer would seemingly be far lighter than this. Yeah, I mean, even he didn't see Tywin dying as part of those consequences, but ostensibly it should have just been Tyrion gets away and there's no harm done really. But in this case, Jaime getting out would have an impact on the war, and that could mean a lot more death.
Right.
So yeah, it's a much different thing.
If they have Jaime and Randall Tarly, Cersei has no generals.
Yeah, that's a huge loss.
So it's pretty major.
And so, of course, they've already sort of given us a hint as to how Cersei might deal with this loss, even before this battle happened. But before we get to that, a little more on Dany and Jaime. You know, Jaime, of course, is her father's killer. Now, how do we balance that against the fact that she knows her father was terrible? She's been told that to her face many times, and she says that she accepts it. Like she said to somebody, I forget who it was she said to, she's like, I know my father was terrible, or whatever. However she phrased it, she was very clear about it.
My father was an evil man.
Yeah. So I don't know that she'll hold that against him. Maybe she will because it's a personal thing, and Jaime's done other stuff, but, you know, because he swore an oath and he broke it, all that. It's really going to be interesting, I think.
As for Jaime actually being rescued, we had people in the chat asking about Widow's Wail, and the question here is that I don't think Jaime can get his stuff off, which points to who could actually rescue him from there. And Aziz posited that it could be Drogon, that Dany doesn't want to lose these captives, so she
scoops him up.
I don't know that she has the ability to order Drogon to do something as specific as that without hurting someone. I don't know. I don't really know how else he could get saved, and I'm quite confident he could get saved, but I don't know who else. Like maybe multiple Dothraki jump in and. I don't know.
Pull him out. Yeah.
They don't even like water. No.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't have to do this deep lake thing. It's not actually as deep as it looks, but it's still kind of oddly deep. I'm not sure. This is one of those things. I'm not an expert on soil erosion. I'm not going to say that it's unrealistic because maybe this kind of thing exists. It feels unrealistic. But again, this is one of those things, just like the sword fighting thing. I'm like, nah, we shouldn't be so sure that this isn't realistic. Maybe it's just a rare thing, and for story convenience, they stuck it there. But
I wouldn't be surprised if, like someone in the chat said, like, I don't think Dany saw Jaime fall into the river pond or get saved or whatever. And she just saw the dragon fire, and like, it wouldn't shock me. Like, I wouldn't be super happy if this is how it went, but it wouldn't shock me if Jaime washed ashore and got his way back to Cersei if there was never any Dany has him captive. Like, I think it's possible.
They were pretty liberal with the logistics when Tyrion fell in the water in the grayscale scene, weren't they? He seemed to, be like 200 meters under the water, and then he's all right.
Well, they were pretty liberal with the logistics in this scene, let's face it, because I watched it over and over again from every angle, and there is no way that horse that Bronn was riding caught up with Jaime realistically because they showed it from above, from the side, from the front, from the back, and there was no other horse in sight. And then all of a sudden, at the very last minute, Jaime's at a full gallop, and another horse just.
All you see is Bronn notice the riderless horse as soon as he jumps off the scorpion. But yeah, it seemed kind of far away.
He
And
was
again,
nowhere in the shot.
Yeah.
And to imagine that he caught up that quickly.
Yeah, it was kind of an unnecessary action movie addition to the scene that otherwise was pretty awesome. But again, you know, they do these things from time to time. It's
They do.
not worth getting too hung up on. I'm sure we all agree.
Definitely not.
So let's talk about the aftermath. There's a lot of aftermath going on here. Not just, we'll start with Cersei, but there's also the food. There's also, you know, Tyrion and Varys and what they're going to think of all this burning of everything. But let's start with Cersei. We didn't talk about Cersei before, even though her scenes with the Iron Bank are before all this. But I think it's more interesting to look in retrospect because we didn't see a lot in that scene. We just saw more of the same. Like, except, let me back up, except for Cersei saying there are things I want to get back to. Do you guys have any takes on what she meant by that? On some things she once returned to her? Is she talking about like Sansa?
I think she's talking about Westeros, the kingdom.
That's what I thought at first as well. But enough other people are interpret it differently that I want to get other takes. Lady Gwyn or Yugboy, did you find anything odd about that statement, or did you see it more mundane?
Just as, you know, the Seven Kingdoms. I want
Okay.
my, you know.
She was being arch, I think, with that, but she was saying something very simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
But one thing I'm wondering about with Cersei and the Iron Bank here is that Cersei has the money now, but will this show of force from Daenerys change the Iron Bank's mind? As they said, their well-being is a matter of arithmetic, not sentiment.
Mm-hmm.
So whether they agreed with Cersei or not, and had this agreement, I don't know that they'll hold to it if they see how strong Daenerys is and how much Cersei has lost.
As much as everyone else is shocked by how powerful the dragons are, perhaps the Iron Bank will be as well. I mean, in their history, they would have writings of it, but up close and personal, none of them were alive, when the dragons were around before. So I could see that being a reason for them to change their calculus, as you said, in arithmetic, is how they do it.
I wanted to say one point about before, I know we're on the Cersei thing, but it's about Bronn and Jaime just real quick. A thought I had for just a moment was that people might be like, Bronn sacrificed himself for Jaime. He really cares about Jaime. No, he lost his gold. Jaime is his ticket to a castle. He needs to keep Jaime alive.
Yeah, he's saving his castle. He's saving his castle and his future wife.
I
and his future children.
Anyways.
That's really funny. And it's a good, it's a good resume builder for Bronn, too, because I think that Bronn could easily change sides here. He's already got Tyrion to vouch for him, and if Dany just hears that he's a sellsword, that's basically his motivation. Well, that means he's not fighting for the Lannisters out of loyalty, so why not bring him over to their side? He's clearly capable, and he made that, he made that great move to save Jaime, which we all think was kind of unrealistic, but the fact is he did it, and that means he's great. He's a badass. So maybe, I could see him coming over and then getting the reward that he thinks he deserves through Daenerys and Tyrion instead.
But not to distract us now, let's get back to Cersei. So a couple questions are, will she still have the Reach under her control now that Randall Tarly is captive or going to be killed or anything like that? We don't know. We don't even know another Reachman that could take his spot.
That really would affect the Iron Bank's thoughts on the matter if Cersei has lost the Reach.
Yeah. But she definitely got them the money. People maybe missed it. We'll reiterate again that there was a quick line where Jaime and Randall and them are talking, and they say, the gold's all the way through King's Landing. We've moved it. It's really one line.
Only basically the food was still in the wagon trains.
Which is important, right?
Yeah.
I mean, she got the money, but she doesn't have any food, and the whole that was it was really a two-part mission to go get the money because she owed the Iron Bank the money, but they needed the food to feed not only the people of King's Landing but also to feed the army that she's trying to build. So now she's got no way to feed her army, which has been reduced and is now evidently possibly leaderless. That's going to give the Iron Bank some reason to reconsider in terms of just risk management. Or there's the possibility that she might try to kind of, renege on the agreement and say, well, now I can't pay you back because I need money to buy food or something, She could. You never know.
That's
She
entirely
needs money
possible.
for more floor maps, I think.
Another painted floor. You did an Essos version, which is a much
Yeah,
larger.
exactly,
You need a lot
exactly.
bigger room for that.
Yeah. I was picturing, by the way, when Tycho was there's this one still of Tycho and Cersei standing there, and Tycho's got kind of like a weird expression on his face, and he's got real big eyes. I didn't include it because I didn't think I was going to mention it, but I was wondering, like, if Tycho was like, hey, you spent money on this when you owed us so much. Yeah.
The things people do with their money.
Yoke Boy, what did you think of the food burning? I think this is a big topic in general.
Yeah, I think it's a big topic. It's kind of, I find it quite weird to think about this. It's interesting to think of the kind of burning this mass of food, you know, in winter now, from a kind of humanitarian point of view, which of course Dany would be thinking of. Is Dany aiming to spare lives with this tactic? Will it in fact cause a huge disaster in winter? Did she employ or dismiss John's advice earlier? It's really muddy waters, and it confuses me thinking about it. What does Dany think she's doing? Is she see herself as the good guy for burning all the food, or what do you think?
Well, this is a really.
I'm wondering how much food she thinks is there, how much food was burned. You know, we know from that opening scene with Jaime and Bronn and Randall and Dickon and them that they were talking about getting the harvest and collecting the harvest, and that some farmers weren't particularly motivated and they needed to hurry them up and all that, which makes it seem like it is a rather large shipment, and we see how large it is. But again, I don't know if that was 10% of the Reach's harvest, 50% or 80%, and that changes how things.
For story reasons, I'm guessing it's going to be a lot, just so that it moves the needle on the.
But I don't think it's enough that it's going to really cause huge issues. I don't think Westeros can starve, and I think the Reach's bounty and harvest is necessary. They can't ship it all in from Essos. A lot of it they probably still could. But I think the Reach is crucial, so I don't think it was all of it that she burned, and I don't think it was all of it that was collected.
I think that there was a big undertone here. Almost every spot on the narrative in this episode included talk of grain. Sansa had a line about grain, Jaime had lines about grain, and now we have Daenerys destroying the grain and what it's needed for. So there's a big theme about this, and it's interesting how each different character has treated it. Sansa has this, we're going to take all the extra, but we're not going to take any from anyone who needs it. That was basically her leadership style. Whereas Daenerys or Cersei and Jaime are taking what they need to handle the siege and to win this war, regardless of the consequences to the small folk, which is kind of backwards because it seems like it'll be more desperate in the north. But that's the Sansa's way of doing things. She's a better person in that regard. And of course now Dany has just burned all the food. So that's just like three different. That's really going to make Hot Pie mad. I mean, that is just cooking. She's no good. She's a bad cook.
I wonder if it's like hurting his business that they can't get their
Seriously,
shipments.
He can't make pies anymore. This is the see. There's always other people who suffer.
Yes, the common folk who suffer most when the Lord's fighter.
Exactly, and that's why, to me, it's a lot more interesting if Daenerys has just condemned a lot of people to death. It really shows like it's exploring the horrors of war, and there's going to be indirect casualties of what she just did. So it is interesting to me that grain did have value to people. I wonder if it'll come up. Who knows? It might be forgotten about.
Yeah, I think they talked about it so much that it's going to matter, and they've talked about it over the course of several episodes. I think when we get into the long night, I think it's going to be more of a plot point. But we'll see. Also, there is chatter about this in the books. It's in a different spot. The grain chatter is here and there throughout the early parts of the book, but it comes more to the forefront in the Elaine chapter in The Winds of Winter when Littlefinger is manipulating the markets and teaching some of his, other scummy lords how to do the same. And so we're going to see that in the books for sure. And I think this is the closest parallel we have to this point because, of course, the show is so much farther ahead in terms of the grain being an issue. But it is going to happen in the books. It's very much there. Okay. So Cersei lost a huge army. Jaime lost a huge army. Whatever they've lost a large portion of their army. It's unclear how many soldiers are dead, but the ones that aren't dead are probably captive. So it's a big loss. But already, as I said much earlier in this episode, they've already given us perhaps a hint as to what Cersei will do about that, which is the Golden Company gets mentioned, which got me really hype. It might just be a simple thing to get Cersei's plot going. It might just, keep it going longer so she has more soldiers. It might be just a mention that never comes into play at all. It might just, maybe the Iron Bank will abandon Cersei and they're not going to bring Golden Company to her at all. But you got to remember, again, it pays to remind, a lot of what the Cersei and Jaime plot here is a stand-in for the young Griff Aegon VI plot. And of course, Golden Company is on his side. So it really fits nicely that the Golden Company would fight for Cersei, given that they're going to fight for Aegon VI, which is the parallel. We already had the Friends in the Reach plot resolve itself with the Tarleys and all that. So I'm really hoping to get, some of the Golden Company's detail. We got it from Euron's armor. I think, as much as they leave out some of the story milestones, they often give us the visual detail. So I have high hopes that if we see the Golden Company, we'll get to see some cool armor, some golden skulls maybe. Maybe they get to yell their battle cry. I really hope that.
Yeah, and of course we've heard about the Golden Company before. In season 4, Stannis and Davos and them are talking about the idea of him hiring the Golden Company. Stannis doesn't want to hire sellswords, but later that season, Jorah says he worked in the Golden Company for a while, which makes me wonder if the Golden Company were hired by Cersei, if he has any connections, and I could see that being a way for Dany to scoop out the Golden Company from under Cersei's nose. I hope that happens. I hope something comes of Jorah having worked there, even if it's just him talking about it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so there's a couple of ways for the Golden Company to interact with existing characters, and Jorah is certainly one of them. Another one is Gendry. Remember the Golden Company, one of the main stories behind the Golden Company is that it's like a home for Westerosi exiles. That's exactly what Gendry is. Second of all, his story is a lot similar to Duck's story. Sir Raleigh Duckfield was a blacksmith who had to leave the Reach in a hurry because the authorities were after him, and he fled to the Golden Company, and that slides in nicely too. So if we're going really into the deep end of this, there are a lot of comparisons to Gendry and young Griff that make sense. If you want to entertain the possibility of Varys changing sides or abandoning Daenerys or having been doing something all along, well, this is where your theories should be pointed, because Gendry could absolutely take that role. One thing, of course, people are going to say, Aziz, there's no time for this. It might be true, but consider how many things have happened this season. We got Highgarden, Casterly Rock in the same episode, both of them falling. We got Jon and Dany meeting in that same episode too. We got Euron destroying a fleet in that same episode. We got so many, they're moving things so quickly that I don't think anyone can really honestly say that they don't have time for this. They can do things really fast. They have time to do it quickly. They may not have time to do it, a nice long drawn out story. And even think back to season 1. Varys saved Gendry. I mean, that's the implication, because that's the implication in the books. And it happened right before the Joffrey's thugs come to Tabo Mat to try and get Gendry. He's gone because he's been sent to the Night's Watch for safekeeping. So, yeah, a lot of potential for that to not happen. But I love how well it lines up.
Where do you guys think Gendry will show up? I tend to think he's just in the Crown Lands. He's just King's Landing area.
Is Aziz insinuating that Gendry rode across the Narrow Sea?
I think he's insinuating that Gendry managed to get across the Narrow Sea, which I guess it's feasible, or that someone helped him do that. Like, I think he was hinting at Varys or something, in which case Varys should have brought it up. But I think that's what he was insinuating. But go on.
Yeah.
It could be, in the books, I always wondered about the Night's Watch purely because they lost their blacksmith.
Mm-hmm.
And that just they need a blacksmith. They don't have one, and they're going to need one, aren't they, when they face off with the others? And that in my mind, I pigeonhole everyone joining the Night's Watch. So.
Well, don't forget that in the show, Gendry's also standing in for Edric Storm.
Oh yeah.
When he was on Dragonstone, he was filling that role, and when in the books, Davos sends Edric Storm away from Dragonstone, he does indeed end up going to Essos. So there could be, there could be something to that. That's where he ended up.
And it also pays to mention that if somehow Gendry tries to claim the throne, or people try to claim the throne for him, this will actually arguably be more compelling than Book Aegon in a lot of ways, because Book Aegon, we didn't know him until he came into the story, and he's we haven't gotten time to know him, and he's, maybe we don't care about him that much. But Gendry we care about. We already care about him. He's already someone we have emotion invested in. We've been waiting for him to come back all this time. So I think that's actually kind of neat. Although still, I'm not saying this is a likely theory. I just was struck by how well it lines up with some book things.
I think it's a heck of a long shot, Aziz, to be honest.
No, I think so too. I think so too. Even though it lines up really well, I do think so too. But I'm keeping some hope alive.
Yeah, I'm team Jorah's the significance with the Golden Company. Yeah, that's my thought.
Gendry
could be both, but I mean, I think the other one's way more likely.
Gendry's maybe more likely to be the dude that starts forging Valyrian steel again, or reforges it. That might be a more sensible, simplistic. And generally, Occam's razor, the simple answer is probably right. And with Gendry, I think him blacksmithing again is probably more likely.
We got a super chat from Andreas Liveris.
Thanks, Andreas.
Jaime says to Bronn, whatever nameless shit heap you're from. Bronn looks kind of angry and sad, remembering something, and then later he mentions he learnt men shit himself when they die at the age of 5. Could this be an origins clue? Yeah, I would think Bronn probably has a dark history. I mean, evidenced by that line right there.
Yeah, back in season 2 or whatever, he says he's worked beyond the wall, even, which was a strange comment. Yeah. But yeah, I don't really know what that means. Maybe it's kind of like Shay, who turns out to have got far more noble lineage than she let on. Maybe something like that. Do you guys have a take on that?
I just wondered if because it kind of reminded me of a little bit of Yoren's backstory. So and the whole beyond the wall, I just wondered if they were drawing in little details from another character.
Yoke Boy, you read I like this comment you wrote in the document here. You got to share this with everybody.
Yeah, if the Golden Company are coming, can they please shoehorn Meleys the Monstrous into the story, please?
Yes,
I don't care if he's dead. Just bring him back.
Yeah.
I want to see him.
I don't think he's dead in show canon. I don't know if it's explicitly. It probably is explicitly stated somewhere in the past in the story material, but whatever. We'll pretend it didn't. Yeah.
I think him and Qyburn could have some interesting conversations.
We've got another super chat from Atreides. Bran's change reminds me of the book Dune, where genetic memory causes a character to be possessed by a dominant personality / memories. P.S. Keep it up.
Oh, thanks, Atreides. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, and George is a big fan of Dune. So, yeah, that is entirely possible. Like the concept of Kwisatz Haderach compared to the concept of Azor Ahai, there's some things in common there. It's a prophetic hero and genetic memory. That's interesting, and he is taking on a role. The Three-Eyed Raven compared to the Kwisatz Haderach there's a lot of things in common there. It's like a title, but also something that only one person could be at a time. If I'm remembering my Dune lore correctly, anyway. So that's a good catch.
Just to kind of add on that, the actor that plays Bran has said that the inspiration behind Bran, partly, maybe you're right with your Dune assertion, but also is Dr. Manhattan.
Don't you mean Dr. Branhattan?
Yeah.
Ew.
It was nice to hear Bran say that, and he's
That's
obviously
from
heard
Watchmen,
it
by the
from
way.
the source.
Yeah, Watchmen. Yeah.
Just clarify.
All right, let's do our worries of the week, and then we will proceed into the pure Q&A section where we'll do questions only.
All right, my worry of the week would be Yara. I don't really think we're going to see her next week, but I'm generally thinking that I'm concerned for her. But in terms of people I'm pretty confident we will see next week is Dickon. I don't care about Randall. I would gladly be happy if he died, so I'm not worried about him. But I am worried that Dickon will take a stand and refuse to bend the knee, and that Daenerys won't be smart enough to keep a political prisoner, that she'll kill them both. So that's my worry.
Let me just jump in here we had a great comment here from Cale Hansen who says, Arnold Schwarzenegger can play Meleys. It's not a tumor. Yeah, it's a second head. That's worse, man. Yeah.
Okay, my worry of the week is all of those people who are roasted that didn't die, and they just kind of lay there.
Awful.
That's the true horrors of war that they're going for. And also, I'm worried about Bronn, because I'm pretty sure it was him that did the life-saving thing with Jaime.
Yeah.
And he's got two worries. Did he get hit by that dragon flame? And how is he going to be either or, how is he going to be treated by Daenerys after he nearly killed a dragon? So a bit of worry for Bronn, although he does seem to be a kind of immortal character.
Yeah.
We've been predicting he's been on our worry of the week more than anyone.
That's why he's not on mine, because I went through this last year. It was last year, right? With you guys, where we just every week.
Like he's wearing red again, but he never did. He just always got out of it. Yeah.
Well, after this, I didn't really have a worry, so Bronn is my worry, but I'm gonna actually just go outside the box and say it's kind of a hope.
Oh, that's an even bigger reversal.
Can we just dispense with this worrying about Bronn?
Start worrying about his death and hope he dies. That'll change it.
I wanted to have died there, but I do really want him to like be a lord with a castle and a wife. Like I just think that would be so funny for Bronn to have that power.
I'm telling you, he's gonna get the twins.
Didn't he have it for like 5 minutes?
He did.
Like,
he didn't have the castle, but he had his lady love.
He was
Lava
about to.
Stoneworth,
Yeah. He was gazing lovingly at his castle.
Yeah.
Not at Lady Stokeworth, who was the talker. Just we could get the curtains and the carpet. Like, yeah, that was pretty funny. I'm less worried about a dragon death than I was before. Now that they know the scorpions are out there, now they know to be prepared for them. And now Tyrion's gonna be like, okay, now see. You do have a reason to be worried about your dragons. You do have a reason. See, proof. Mm-hmm. They probably have a bunch of those at King's Landing, which is probably true because Qyburn says that he has all the blacksmiths working on them. I guess they only got one finished in time for that, but yeah. So I don't have a specific worry beyond that. I am still worried about Yara. You know, she's in captivity. I think Dickon, yeah, I'm a little worried about that. I think Randall's more likely to eat it here than, or maybe get eaten. Maybe someone gets eaten by Drogon here in the aftermath, just as a show of force or something. Because surely Dany's going to demand the survivors to bend the knee to her or something like that.
All right.
So those are our worries. Let's go into our questions. Okay, so Shay, you can't read this one because this is directed at you.
What?
I'm going to read this question for you because it's not a question, but it's directed at you.
Okay.
From Lord Captain Commander Haim Helminth, the Sellsword Sentinel and commander of Ashaea's Queensguard, let's do a quick rundown. She is cunning, beautiful, adored by the masses, and knowledgeable, not just on the vast history of Westeros, but also instrumental on all things going on behind the scenes. I of course, am talking about our favorite Queen Ashaea. Mm-hmm. She's not talking about a character in the book.
Wow.
How does she do it, and who wouldn't follow her to hell and back? Not really a question, but I know. But who needs a Dany or Cersei when you have an Ashaea? Well, I totally agree with that sentiment.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pretty sure anyone watching can tell that I'm very embarrassed, but thank you, Lord Captain Commander.
Right on. Good way to start our question and answer session here. From Mark Joseph, a.k.a. The Snow in Winterfell, where do you think the book Field of Fire 2 will happen? And will it be Dany versus Aegon? I think in the Reach, just like in the books, because that's where there's all this space, and it seems like the Reach will be solidly on Team Aegon's side. So I could see it coming down there, maybe. Do you guys have a different take?
I would say I agree. I'll say that to give them a moment to get their answers together, just because I do agree.
No. The reason I'm pausing is because I agree. I'm just trying to add something, but I'm adding. We can only be vague, can't we? It seems like the Reach should be a good place if there's going to be a Field of Fire. If there's going to be some dragon versus dragon action, then you can. If Aegon manages to kind of steal a dragon or a twist like that, so it's a real Dance of the Dragons.
Yeah.
Then you can go anywhere, can't you? You're not confined to it having a nice field.
Thinking about that. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say it could also be, a field of fire was a dragon against a, just a standing army, not dragon on dragon. So it doesn't have to be sort of a Dany versus Aegon. It could be one of them, Dany or Aegon, versus. Say the troops from the Reach, and if you're really going for a straight up parallel to Westerlands and Reach conglomerate, maybe that's how they get them on their side or something.
Yeah, and I think that you might have, you might have more of a. The Golden Company has a very diverse army. They have elephants, and they have a huge amount of archers, like better archers than what you normally see in Westeros, and they might have scorpions or something like that. They may have prepared especially by that point. By the time this battle rolls around in the books, they'll be well aware of the dragons. They already are well aware of the dragons, so maybe they'll get some anti-dragon weaponry, and then that'll make the battle more of a contest, whereas this one wasn't much of a contest.
We got a super chat from Mike Bruno again. Thank you, MVP, this live stream. He said, no question this time. Just thanks so much for giving us such great content to tide us over between each episode and the endless wait for the Winds of Winter. That is
Thank
true.
you.
Aziz is killing it with adding live streams. We have 3 now, and he wants to have another one with LML coming up. So he is definitely making sure you're well tided over if the many Game of Thrones podcasts weren't already doing it. There are so many.
I've seen the daylight many times after being up all night editing, but I'm loving it, guys. I'm loving it. Okay, from Rebea, Lady of Waves, captain of the Iron Shadow Cat. Do you think we'll actually see the Golden Company this season, or at least a representative? And do you think we'll get a little more Blackfire background? Or will we get any Blackfire info when Arpelzel is revealed, assuming that Jon will be still seen as a bastard? As much hope as I have for this Golden Company plot, and for maybe even holding a little bit of hope for Gendry being, their version of Fegon, I don't think there'll be even a speck of Blackfire stuff on the TV show, unfortunately. But to answer the first part of the question, I do think we'll at least see a representative of the Golden Company.
This season?
Yeah, if not more. But, there's been nothing in the trailers to show anything. But, of course, that's something they would keep hidden. But a whole nother, army, sneaking into the set. I don't know. That's maybe that's more of a next season.
I'm going to say my guess is next season. Maybe you're right. We see one person from there. But I don't think we see them till next season. That's just, I don't know, random. I just don't think we're going to see them this season.
The question continues, will the Iron Bank continue to support Cersei after the Field of Fire 2.0, since she now looks like a losing proposition, or will the Braavosi hatred of dragons compel them to double down on Cersei? Now, we entertained the first part of that already, but that's a good point that maybe the dragon stuff makes them even more want to support Cersei. So, that's hard to tell. The way Tycho is talking, it makes it sound like they're very cold and bottom line about stuff, and their hatred won't matter. As he said, sentiment doesn't make their decisions. Yeah. Money does, or arithmetic. And the arithmetic, of course, he's referring to money.
yeah, but it might be, the arithmetic might be that with the money that they make more money when Daenerys isn't destroying the person they're backing. And it's just, they might just be like, it's really simple. Cersei can't beat this woman with dragons. But we got a super chat from Stephanie Vale. 4 kitten mittens.
That's an It's Always Sunny reference for the fat or in between. Does your cat make too much noise all the time?
Kitten mittens. That's our new sponsorship deal. Yes. We didn't tell you guys earlier, but we are going to have kitten mittens next week.
Follow up, will Cersei abandon Jaime? Paralleling the way Jaime abandoned Cersei when she was a prisoner of the Faith of the Seven, leading to their final break. Interesting. Do you guys have a take on that, maybe? Is Jaime and Cersei... Any guesses on what might happen between them? As far as it's cool to look for parallel ways for this to go down. Looking at.
Do you think Cersei's just going to be happy and relieved to see Jaime, or is she going to be mad that he's lost his battle, that she'd lost? I don't know what she'll have to do to get Jaime back, or anything like that. I could see her being irritable towards him.
She doesn't like people who get captured.
Yeah, I think I keep holding on to this kind of slender reed of hope of, the show paralleling what's happening between Jaime and Cersei in the books. This could be a way for them to work it in. My hope is fading, though.
Poor Lady Gwyn. Her hope is fading. What can we do to restore Lady Gwyn's hope?
It's just so hard to, predict Jaime because they've messed around with him for the books for whatever reason. It makes it very, very difficult. His arc isn't in the kind of shape we're expecting. There's even no Valancourt, right? So, what does that mean? We're all assuming Jaime's a Valancourt in the books. What does it mean if there's no Valancourt in the show? They're not really obliged to go the same route, are they? The whole thing could change.
I know Unsullied who mysteriously just think Jaime's going to kill Cersei, so they're convinced of it without any hint of any. Yeah, so
I guess
there's something being telegraphed there.
I guess it's the Aerys stuff, maybe the Kingslayer, Queenslayer stuff.
I would say that. That's a good call. Yeah. They might be taking that in. We got a super chat from Acre Frey who said, "I just want to hear you I want to hear you this isn't a good sign for what he wants. I want to hear you try to say Irish wrist rot." See, I messed it up.
Shay couldn't even say the sentence. So.
I couldn't even say the sentence.
All right, okay.
I was grinning at the
Irish wristwatch.
Okay.
I have some practice.
You had practice. All right, let's y'all see if York Boy can do it.
Irish wristwatch.
Easy for him. He did it pretty well. Okay, Lady Gwyn.
Irish wristwatch.
Hey,
Also
she,
very easily.
she did it the most confidently.
Pro.
Yeah, Lady Gwyn did it best. I really slowed down to be sure. Lady
I
Gwyn
just tried to
did it.
say it normally and as part of the sentence, and it didn't work out for me.
Rob Storm wants us to know, could Sansa send Arya to kill Cersei? Interesting. Yeah, we've talked about Sansa being worried about what Cersei will do to them. Maybe Cersei should be worried about what they'll do to her. Interesting. You guys see that as a possibility? I mean, Sansa doesn't even know about Arya's face-changing ability yet, but she'll probably learn that. Holy.
I should think that Sansa values Arya too much to send her off on another expedition. That I would hope that Sansa, wants Arya to be safe. I mean, what a risk going to King's Landing. Like you say, she doesn't know that she's a master assassin face changer.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I don't think Sansa would do it. I think she cares about her family being safe and, weathering this long winter than dealing with Cersei. Which Cersei, maybe she does know she is a threat, but I don't think she will. Especially Cersei. They're about to get some... assuming the news spreads to Winterfell, they're about to learn that Cersei lost to Dragonfire there, so she might be a little less worried about her. We got a super chat during that, though, from Bob Bobo. That's a good name.
That's $100 Australian for the
Is it
super
Australian?
chat. Thank you very much,
I didn't
Bob.
say AU. I just said A.
I think that he says watching from Australia at the bottom.
I hadn't gotten to that. The question is, why has Jon mentioned that the person sitting on the Iron Throne also has the title Protector of the Realm? How do you think Jon convinces Dany to go to the Wall? Watching from Australia.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Well, I guess there's kind of two different questions there. So let's start with the first one. That's a good point, reminding her that that's what the job of king/queen is in the first place. The ultimate stated goal of a feudal ruler is you protect your subjects in exchange for military service and taxes and things like that. That's basically supposed to be the deal, So yeah, it could just be she needs to be reminded of that. That's just kind of why I brought up Stannis earlier, because
She sure knows titles pretty well, so she should know that that's there.
I wonder if Davos could be the one. It'd be funny if Davos would be the one to convince Dany, since Davos convinced Stannis. It might. What I think for a lot of people to convince them. And this is why I think that it's still going to be about there's still going to be a lot of Southern politics and stuff happening in the South for quite a while. Because like John said, how's he going to convince anyone that this stuff is real? No one believes it, And that's as hard as it is to convince like anybody of that. Even Dany is like, I don't know about this stuff. They might have to be confronted with it like face to face. I'm worried about it. I'm worried that it'll take that long for people to kind of join together and act on it. What about you, Lady Gwyn or Yolkboy? Do you have any takes on that?
No, I just agree. I was agreeing with what you're saying. I'm trying to add to it, but I can't think of anything at the moment. Thank you for the super chats to all of you. Thank you, because we do split it between the four of us. So
yes, we do.
Certainly makes our evening. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would just also agree with what you were saying, but I think it's a great point that he brings up that is part of the title there, and I would love to see someone needle her about that. But I don't know how I actually think he convinces her to go to the Wall. I would imagine that he, gets some concrete details. Something happens at the Wall. There's some big event that means that she has to go.
Yeah.
What about the House of the Undying? What if that vision comes true? She gets to the throne and it's an empty conquest, and then what does she do in the vision? She goes to the Wall. So she has that kind of prophetic drive, if you want to call it like that. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think maybe another thing is that it probably will be a number of people that convince her, maybe a number of factors, not just Jon. Jon will probably be the main one, and we know that Jon. Without getting into trailer spoilers, anyone who's seen any trailer knows that Jon is going to be back in the North at some point this season. I don't think that's a spoiler to say that. So we know that he gets to leave Dragonstone at some point. When? I don't know. But at some point, he's going to go up there. And how that goes from there, maybe that'll help figure out, maybe that'll help convince Dany. After he has an experience up north, he's like, we got to do this.
Oh, cool. We got a super chat from the past who was in our Queen's Guard. And he said, feel free to dope up my name in your Queen's Guard. Perhaps
Nice.
something Zelda related, or
Ooh.
turn me into a jester. Or is that up to me to change through Patreon? We do like talking to you through Patreon so that we can give you a list of ideas. I like the idea of being Zelda related because I'm a big Legend of Zelda fan and I've been playing Breath of the Wild for a long time now. So yeah, definitely message us through Patreon, and we'll message you, but with more names because that's helpful. I'm gonna write this down.
I
Thank
recall
you.
sending you an email when you signed up. If you didn't see it, then that's what you would respond to. But we'll reach out to you as well. We'll make a note here. Thanks for that, The Pest. Okay, I've got the document. We got more questions here. Curveball asks, with the army burned, it seems Cersei's only offensive move in the short run is to send Euron's navy armed with scorpions to attack Dragonstone. Book Euron is cruising around Westeros to its east coast, and Dragonstone is the staging point to attack King's Landing. Maybe Book Euron attacks the Tyrell garrison on Dragonstone to set up invasion home base and/or uses proximity to negotiate with Book Cersei. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, and I wonder. Certainly, this season has made people consider more the idea of Euron and Cersei in the books, which is certainly possible, and some of that is based on proximity. And I definitely wonder what Euron's going to do next. And it's really hard to guess at because, it was hard to figure the last time, too. And we didn't see Casterly Rock coming. Do you guys have any thoughts on what Euron might do next? I'm really at a loss for that. Like, the Old Town thing seems off the table. Maybe it's back on now that if the Reach defects to Dany, maybe Old Town can be back on.
Yeah, Old Town could. You're right. That's a great point. That Old Town could be back on. But obviously, what he's up to is getting Cersei in bed. That's his goal. I don't think that'll happen soon. But I think Old Town. Yeah, I think the Reach is something they need to lock up. The thing is that we haven't seen any high towers. We haven't seen anyone of power else in the Reach. So I don't know. Maybe he just takes it, just rule from there. It's kind of weird to me. I'm not sure. It's a power vacuum right now.
If you want to get real crackpotty, just imagine that Euron is actually working for Varys on this whole Golden Company thing, and that's how he knew Euron knew where to be at all times. I'm not letting it go. Another one from Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroon, one of our lordly patrons. Thanks for that. This goes for books and show, but why do you guys suppose we never see any Reeds or Crannogmen at the Wall? The North is still the Wall's greatest benefactor, but the Crannogmen just don't seem to contribute bodies. I realize they are in the southern portion of the North, but still, they seem suspiciously absent, or have I missed something? Well, Lady Gwyn made the note here about Bowen Marsh.
Bowen Marsh,
Yeah.
Crannogmen.
There is one, but I'd say they're pretty insular. Yeah, I think there's others, but that they stay home.
A lot of them are. This is a bit of it feels like there's a lot of prejudice against the Crannogmen in Westeros, especially from a lot of Riverlanders, especially from Freys. So it might mean that they're more of an enclosed culture because a lot of the rest of the world looks down on them, and so they kind of stick to themselves. But I think we're going to see them more in the books because of their presence at. We saw their presence at Moat Cailin attacking the Ironborn who were holding the castle. And, if Hallan Reed's ever going to come into the story, he may have some people with him. And, maybe Robb's will pass through there. And there's just a lot of potential there. But it's hard to zoom in on and narrow down specific predictions. Any other takes on that? All right. Okay, so Mark Joseph, the Snow and Winterfell, has a question for Lady Gwyn. This is from last episode because you weren't here, so he still wanted to get your take on this. Melisandre says, "My job is done. I brought ice and fire together. Do you think that Jon and Dany are the Song of Ice and Fire, or is it just Jon because of R+L equals, or a child from Dany and Jon?"
Yeah, that's a very great question. I think from Mel's point, it's kind of like famous last words. My job is done. Not quite, I don't think. I think that what everyone is missing in story, and not so much out of the story, but definitely in the story, is that Jon is the union of ice and fire. He's really the fulfillment of the what was to have been the pact of ice and fire from the Dance of the Dragons. So he's already the representation of that. So putting him and Dany together is almost superfluous. And I worry if that places Jon in the position of being, a last hero or Azor High Reborn. What role that casts Dany in?
Nissa,
You know
yeah.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Jon and Dany have to maybe love each other first for that to happen, but that seems to be, underway, at least to be married. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a super chat from Miss Leah. Any thoughts re-seeing Quaithe again in the books/show? So both, I think show, no way. In the books, I think that, Dany's still in Essos, so yeah, I think it's even more likely in the books. I'd say I'm in the positive end of things for seeing Quaithe, but still pretty ambivalent.
She thinks she's getting visions from Quaithe at the end of Dance. She's not sure about it, and it's kind of ambiguous. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong. I think I'm remembering that right. So I think that, yeah, she's still going to be in the books for sure, although seeing her, maybe she'll just be in Dany's mind. That'd be a little odd if we never ever saw her again and only had her in Dany's mind. But so I kind of think we'll see her. But yeah, in the show, I think no. I don't think there's almost any chance she'll be seen in the show again. She hasn't been seen since season 2. She hasn't even been seen since season 2, right?
No, they haven't. The show, no.
Yeah, I think
she was in 2 episodes, I think, and that was it. She was painting this guy, and that was it. That was her role. I'm just painting this bloke.
Didn't Bronn fall in with Jaime? Yes, he fell. I thought I could have sworn that said fall in love. I thought a chat commenter said, "Did Bronn fall in love with Jaime?"
Also true.
Obviously.
It's easy to fall in love with Nikolai.
Yes, he did. But in response to that, he jumped in really, and he also is not in heavy metal armor.
Yeah, he wasn't. He was wearing leather. You can see him swimming.
He can swim
a bit.
Yeah.
Real quickly there at the end. It doesn't mean he wasn't hurt or burned, but he was swimming, so he wasn't actually dead, at least not yet. From Anthony Gonzalez, do you think book Lannister soldiers in this exact situation would have cut and run? In the book they had lost a lot of their experience / quality soldiers fighting Starks, Tullys, and Stannis Baratheons / Florent forces. The current Lannister army, if I'm not mistaken, are nowhere near the cream of the crop and have little to no experience. Yeah, that might be a problem that they face when...
Yeah, I don't think anyone could face that and not have a huge portion cut and run.
It could be that Dany does the same thing, where she blocks their line of retreat with walls of fire, or pins them against a body of water, or both, so... But they might want to run. That's the same difference. If their morale breaks and they're not fighting anymore, then it's basically the same result in terms of the battle.
Okay.
Another super chat from Acre Frey. I guess you should read that. I can't see it very well.
With the glass candles being lit, do you think their ability to communicate will be kept a secret? Who will use them? If both sides do, will they be able to intercept others' communications? Ooh. And the glass candle thing is why I'm more positive than not about Quaithe being involved. But we also have Marwyn as an element that could come to Dany and use that. So I do think that they'll be involved, and I think Dany and Marwyn are the most likely people to use it.
Marwyn going to Dany might mean that's one of the things he wants to teach her. As far as intercepting each other's communications, I don't know about that. Maybe. That seems like... I don't think we have enough information to answer that at this point. We're too early in the understanding of what glass candles can actually do, apart from the communication and getting into people's dreams. And even that is not entirely clear. Go ahead, Joke Boy.
I think there's a good chance that Sam will be using the glass candles. One was lit, and then Marwyn leaves. He leaves it behind. It's there. It's ready. Go. And presuming that the same thing happens that's happening on the show, where Sam is finding out valuable information. That could be his method of communicating this valuable information with the wall or whatever.
Okay, another one from Anthony Gonzalez. I think Littlefinger is so caught off guard dealing with Bran, he goes about his business like he's speaking to the new Lord of Winterfell, which Bran isn't interested in, offering his services, but in reality playing his game. There's no possible way Baelish and all his experience could know how to spin this situation. He knows coin and politics. He wasn't raised by someone like Old Nan. This kind of touches on someone like this culture. It's culture shock for him. The North works differently. They don't have these court situations where people are constantly backstabbing each other, and there's more unity in the North, especially around House Stark.
There's certainly a better sense of family from what we know, right?
Yes, something Littlefinger doesn't know much about. Apparently, he didn't have brothers and sisters. Not that maybe his father and mother were okay, but yeah, I don't think he grew up. He grew up in someone else's family.
Yeah.
Throwing River around.
I imagine he wanted to be a Stark, don't you?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, another one from Lord of the Chicken Dance. If Jaime gets captured by Dany in the book and sympathizes with her over Cersei, would he oust whomever Dany's betrayer is? Or is this too specific a set of circumstances? Yeah, Jaime getting captured by Dany in the book. Yeah, it's hard to predict whether that same scenario could come to play. I kind of don't think Jaime will be captured by Dany in the books. I'm kind of leaning that way. What's your guys' instincts on Jaime getting captured by Dany in the books?
It's just they're just so removed. I mean, I'm not saying it won't happen, but you would have never thought about it if it wasn't for the show. Just going on book canon, they're just so in opposite directions almost, aren't they?
Yeah, they really are, and especially with Fagon coming onto the scene, it looks like some of the Lannister stuff is going to be pushed to the side, and that's who Dany will be dealing with.
And with Jaime off in the Riverlands doing his thing.
Yeah, he's got his Lady Stoneheart to contend with. Yeah, you're totally right. Okay, from Joseph Wilson, I believe this is Jay Wilson, Winter's King. As for why Sansa might look uncomfortable, all her living siblings became superheroes while she was being abused and raped. No one had a great, safe time. But everyone else did things to overcome their situations. Yes, that's true. Jon is Jesus, Bran is omniscient, and Arya is a killing machine. Even Robb is revered as the young wolf.
Rickon didn't do anything.
That's true.
He died. He got worst of all.
But no one remembers him
No,
anyway.
it's true.
All Sansa has is regular old knowledge and experience, and that has come from Cersei and Littlefinger. I think in the near future we will see Sansa follow in her mother's footsteps, going south to secure the Riverlands and become more of a political player. And with the mention of the Golden Company, in coordination with the repayment to the Iron Bank being fulfilled, it seems likely that the Golden Company is coming to Westeros to fight for the Lannisters. But he also wonders if maybe that is why Melisandre is headed to Volantis. Maybe that has something to do with the Golden Company. Or maybe she's going to consult the Red Priest on everything. It would be interesting to get, for book implications, if we do get Dany versus the Golden Company, wonder if we'll get elephants in the show, if they do show up. I'm kind of doubt if we'll get elephants in the show, but that would be so awesome. We have had mammoths. I mean, maybe we'll get elephants.
Maybe it's within the realm of possibility, but I'd say I'm negative about the idea. But I like the idea of Sansa going south. I don't think it's going to happen. I think she's really concerned with the grain stores and the coming war and all of these things in winter. I think that she's got that focus. It's possible something could happen to jostle her to make her want to do that, but I don't think she needs to or is going to.
It might play, it just occurred to me, it might play right into that. If they're having food problems, the Riverlands has been damaged severely by the war, but they are far more fertile.
Yeah.
If they could work with that.
I think it's more likely for her to do something like that if Edmure's still around, if he pops back up.
And they've kind of ignored Edmure so far this season.
But I think if he popped back up, she has a familial connection that she could go play on, and she could say, yeah, you keep the Riverlands, you just give us grain, we'll put you back up. I don't think that's going to happen, but it would be nice.
Yeah.
I agree with Joseph's sentiment here that, Sansa's getting a bit of a raw deal, but I think that's been accentuated in the show where, the bad stuff she's been through is worse. Plus, you haven't got the benefit of seeing her gain political powers. It's been hard for them to convey. I think in the books we'll see her, advance. We'll see it a lot closer, where George has got a lot more time to articulate how she's learning. In the show, they're just shown her, she's advising about breastplates, and that seems like. It's very little considering that Arya, like you said, they're all superheroes and she's there. But I really think it's the book versus show thing.
Yeah, her powers are much more subtle and internal, which you see in the books because you get the benefit of her point of view. So
yeah,
it's hard to convey that, I think, in the show.
Definitely. There's another part of this question. He wants us to discuss the possibility that Dany will follow in Aegon the Conqueror's footsteps and may get crowned at the Sept, or at least get crowned, period. Maybe not at the Sept in Old Town, because...
I was like, it had to be in Old Town.
Yeah, but...
Not King's Landing.
Being crowned is like having a ceremony rather than just coming in and being like, hey, this is mine. That Aegon did that to gain legitimacy, and he adopted the Faith of the Seven for the same reason, so that the king wouldn't have a separate... religion than the vast majority of the people. So
yeah, it's notable we haven't seen anything of Dany and religion really at all, of her and the Faith of the Seven, or whether how much she knows about the Faith of the Seven, how much she would actually worship them or be okay with swearing herself to the faith of seven. We don't know. She certainly doesn't seem to have any other religious beliefs that are stronger, except in herself.
And Melisandre's going to want her maybe to worship the Lord of Light or something like that. But and to answer that part about Melisandre, I think Melisandre is going to go get more R'hllor followers, because I think that's going to happen in the books, and so maybe they're trying to hit the same base here in the show.
We got a super chat from Ghost again. Who else would you like to see fighting in the war for the Dawn? Would you like Cersei to survive to face them? I would love Cersei to see a White Walker to be facing them down. I don't think she's going to make it to that stage, but that would be so hilarious.
Wow, yeah.
I want Littlefinger. I don't think he'll survive either, but I want him to see him too. I want all the non-believers.
I would love Bronn to, be up there in the north when the White Walkers come and see him, because you saw in that battle scene, he was the one guy who was thinking straight under extreme pressure. And, he's such a brilliant actor as well, isn't he? So I would love to see Bronn kind of working his magic and finding a way to kind of stave them all off.
Yeah, my hopes and fears aside, Bronn, Jaime, Tyrion, Thea, all these people that you're kind of rooting for, and I would be nice to see them. I think a lot of them we will see up there. Not Cersei, not Littlefinger.
Yeah, I don't see Cersei surviving to see that either. Although it would be kind of cool, just to see what would happen or how she'd react to it. But yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah, I see. We have the Brotherhood going up there. I imagine whether they're not there for the War for the Dawn, I think some of them will die, or at least one of them will die during this Eastwatch excursion. So I imagine some of them will at least see the Army of the Dead or some mystical things like that. So that'll scratch that itch a little bit. But basically, obviously, everyone that's up north right now, Jon, Dany, Jorah, I think all of them will make it and survive to the war.
Right on. Okay.
We got another super chat. Austin Woods, since the Freys are all dead, are the Tullys in charge of the Riverlands? And if so, are the Riverlands still a part of the Kingdom of the North? Well, it's, to the victor go the spoils, so that's the jury's still out on who controls the Riverlands, because Cersei obviously had a pretty good lock on it with the Freys there, but now she doesn't. But it's not like the North has anyone to send. Yeah, no one has control. Like Littlefinger has a pretty decent claim because he's got Harrenhal. Like if he wanted to make a pass for it, he maybe could, but I don't think he wants that war-torn kingdom.
It's important to remember that in the books, Littlefinger is Lord Paramount of the Riverlands, but in the show, it was given to the Freys. In the books, they got Riverrun, but not Lord Paramountship. So. Yeah, it is kind of up in the air right now. It's unsettled. It's like it's kind of unstable. No one is ruling the Riverlands, and no one really has that title right now.
Yeah.
Where is Edmure?
Yeah, where is Edmure? I mean, if Edmure comes back, and Dany wins, she can restore him or something like that.
Or if as we mentioned, if the North decides to push for him to be in charge of the Riverlands, they could do it. But he certainly doesn't have the ability to just say, I'm going to take the Riverlands back. Like, just pull up to Riverrun and sit in the main seat. I don't think so. Okay, Acre Frey again. I hope after winter is over, Bran rebuilds the wall, bringing about another legendary Bran the Builder, whose name is Stark.
That's a good way to reset the legend, kind of refresh it, make sure people remember 10,000 years from now, since the first 10,000 years are expiring, right?
You are not alone in that, and wanting Bran to be the Builder.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're going to get a lot of thumbs up for that one. If that was a Facebook comment, you'd get a lot of likes. If it was a Reddit post, it'd have a lot of upvotes.
I'm gonna keep going with social media sites. If it was a Twitter a tweet, it would have a lot of favorites.
Yes, this would take a while if we go through all the social media sites. Question from Zachary Titel. With the long night inevitably coming in the TV show, is there a possibility that we will see the sun actually getting blotted out for an extended period of time on TV? Will the entire world be cast into darkness biblical style? Old Nan's stories about people being born and dying without ever seeing the sun. Night's Watch / Night King / long night terminology. Prince to bring the dawn prophecy, etc. may all be leading to this. I personally think it would be very dramatic to show that catastrophic event happen at the end of Season 7 and then film the bulk of Season 8 in total darkness. It would be a daring cinematic move for the creators, but would really raise the show's stakes to a new level. That's an awesome idea. And, I haven't given that a lot of thought, that, the long night should be dark. Should be just dark all the time. Mm-hmm. That is a filmmaking challenge.
Yeah,
it is.
It is a filmmaking film
in Iceland.
I think they'd have to do it, when it's kind of semi-dark and there's a bit of light in the sky. I'm no filmmaker or cameraman, but I think it would be pretty tough to do it in total darkness, but they could capture the essence, couldn't they?
Yeah, I think they could capture it. People would have flames and fire. There would just be more firelight and darkness. But two things about that. One, I think it would be more likely to be for an episode, a couple episodes, than all 6 episodes of season 8. One, but two, as much as like maybe it would be good, I really don't want it to be the case. I want to see things. It's so dark. Like their color grading. I've complained about it before. Lots of people like their color gradings. I hate their color grading, and I think it washes everything out. And they already make things really dark and grainy. So for them to,
it doesn't need to be darker.
It doesn't need to be darker. It really doesn't. So as fitting as it would be, I'm down on the idea. I don't want it to be the case.
It would be like that scene where Theon burns a letter and it's just totally black. Just a bit of fire. That's what it was.
I like Pinam123, our friend, pointed out in the comments, night shots are a budget saver. That could really help them for filming expensive.
You don't have to see the whole field of battle. You just see what's close by because you couldn't see what's far away.
You just see the dragon flame and not the dragon.
Yeah, a little more like what they did with Euron's night battle this time.
Yeah. I think that's a good point that a lot of night stuff would help the budget, though.
That's funny. Well, we got more dragons to worry about spending money on, but at least we got no light. Here's a great comment that we got. It's not a question, but from Ryan Kessner. Olenna says, "Don't listen to clever men." Then we see Dany's plans go badly due to Tyrion's clever plans. Cersei, on the other hand, calls Qyburn the most clever man she knows. Nice. That's cool. Yep, and of course, you don't need more foreshadowing for Cersei's doom, but that does. I like that nice little parallel there. I definitely missed that. I haven't seen anyone else catch that. Good one. From Jacob Ponsner, Jon mentions that his father was part of overthrowing Dany's father. He's right, even though Ned isn't his father, because Rhaegar was also planning to force Aerys to abdicate. It's also just a comment rather than a nice. See, our commenters are awesome. That's really good. So we're going to go for maybe 10 more minutes, and then we'll cut it off. So any other questions you have to get in, now is your last chance. We've got a few more here that I had taken from ahead of time.
I've got a few written down, but again, if you wrote your question throughout the episode, I didn't grab it. I only grabbed it if you wrote it at the end of the episode. Yeah, I had to focus on being in it. Last week, I was not talking as much because I was so distracted by the chat.
Right on. So from L. Johns, we have, I was made suspicious by the scene in episode 4 where Bran and Arya reunite under the Godswood tree. Bran mentioned seeing her at the crossroads. Could Bran handing off the Valyrian steel dagger be another crossroads? I do think it because I certainly back the idea that that it's really important that she got armed with Valyrian steel and it could foreshadow her fighting a White Walker. I'm not sure if maybe that is kind of a crossroads. Although I'm not really sure what other direction she could go. But I think
she
it
just
does.
Passed a crossroads. Right,
yeah.
Right before that, he said he saw her at the crossroads, and she was at a crossroads at that moment. She was trying to decide between King's Landing and Winterfell. So I think she was at that time, but not now.
Here's another observation rather than question that I really like. Jaime's from Neil McFarlane. Jaime's charge at the end reminds me of Dunk and Egg, which is specifically the story that Eustace Osgrey tells about the Little Lion, how he ended the war just by killing the King Lannister. That's pretty cool. Yeah, and of course I love historical parallels. That's great.
I just want to point out, where is it? Ginny and Curtis points out that Sansa pulled a talk to the hand on Baelish with no need to seize the last word. I'll assume it was something clever. The same word. Clever right. Man. But awesome. We also got a super chat from Atreides again. Thank you. Director spent all of HBO's budget on epic battles. Unfortunately, this meant they couldn't afford that one more lamp.
It really went down to the bottom.
It's the ambiance. They're doing it on purpose. We may not like it, some of us, but they definitely know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's funny. From Lady Storch. Dany and Jon, isn't it time for a political marriage? They already set up that in the previous season when Dany left Dario behind. She was expecting to make another political alliance. Why she did Marine. Or that will be the most practical way to avoid having to bend the knee and still make an alliance in. It seems to me that Jon is the only suitable candidate anyway. The romanticism is good, but secondary and not necessary. They have the perfect excuse. I said a lot of this earlier. I think it's totally agree. Yeah, I mean, it kind of dodges the bend the knee thing, and you're right.
I'd say there's a couple of good. I just to say that I think there are a couple other good choices that she could go with. I don't think they're likely choices. I don't think they're as good as Jon. But, for instance, Robert Arryn, not a good choice, and already tied to the north. But Dickon Tarley, I don't know that he's married. Like, for example, if she wants to put someone in charge of the Reach. Gendry, technically, as much as he could bring the Stormlands. Like, there's a few other marriage possibilities, but I don't think anyone will be as much of a slam dunk as Jon will be, and I'm sure Tyrion has to have thought about this.
Yeah,
You know?
Tyrion. Yeah, I agree that Tyrion's the man that's going to make this. That's going to realize this. Maybe if not Davos or both of them together, perhaps.
Super chat from Andreas Laveris. We don't see a question, but we'll keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, I'll start this next question while you keep an eye out for that. Also from Lady Storch, she says that we can actually see that Bran was a robot already, kind of, when they're back as far as when they were fleeing from the cave. We can, he was kind of robotic already, she says, that he was cold talking to me when he said, they found us. That's kind of true, but he was also, like, excitable when the Night King touched him, you know, so I don't know. I may have to go back and look at that. Do you guys have a take on that?
I think it might have been like kind of the beginning of his. I think she means when they're in the woods after the cave, they found us. So he's already.
I see. Yes.
Yeah, he's absorbed. He's become the Three-Eyed Raven by that point.
Yeah. With Bloodraven dead and Summer dead and Jojen already. So Jojen was dead for a while, and Hodor is the other big one. Yeah.
That could well be maybe the first time we see him being like that. Actually, in that scene. So that's a good point.
Yeah. Question from Ilko de Boer. Khal Drogo died of a silly unattended wound. Who will take care of Drogon's wound? Well, we saw similar wounds that Drogon took in Daznak's pit, and in fact, there's a similar shot of Dany pulling the spear out in Daznak's pit versus her trying to pull this scorpion bolt out. I'm not sure it's going to be a big deal, but that's an interesting thought because Drogon.
They both got stabbed with they both took a wound to the shoulder specifically. It was their shoulder bolt.
Yeah.
I don't think Drogon's dying of poison or of a wound right here though. But they both did take a similar wound.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out for that. Yeah, we did talk about the possibility of a dragon dying, and I don't think any of us thought Drogon would be the one, and this would be kind of a weird way for it to happen. But hey, it's possible.
I would love Drogon to die. Sod you all, he's a monster. Why are you supporting a dragon? He burns everyone. He's horrible.
I'll tell you, what I agree with you 100%. Except that we have the White Walkers to deal with right now. We need the dragons. That's my thought. I generally want them to be gone, but we need them now.
They seem more affable than a dragon. they're more human. You know, at least you can communicate to them.
Speaking of that, Wiz the Smith wants to know what will happen with Widow's Wail, who will wield said sword. That's a good call. You know, I thought maybe Dany will just abscond with it and walk around with it to look fancy because it's Valyrian steel. But, you know, she'll probably give it to somebody that could use it, like, as a warrior. But I don't know who that would be, you know. She doesn't have, like, named Arax. Maybe Jon. I mean, not Jon. Sorry, Jorah. It'd be funny if Jorah has a former Stark sword that's been changed, and then Jon has the former Mormont sword. That'd be wacky. Sword. What is that? Like a play the sword shuffle, guys. Yeah. Ali McHugh, do you think we'll see any more flashbacks?
It's a great question.
Probably because of Bran. I mean,
I think Bran will see some. I'm still fingers crossed for some Rhaegar Lyanna action is what I want out of a flashback, really.
Yeah.
Just to put a face to the name.
Yeah. Also, Misty306 wants to know, in the TV show, was Dany's vision of the Iron Throne, was that snow or ash? I went back and looked at that a while ago to see, and I don't think, and I couldn't tell. I definitely lean towards ash, though.
It doesn't really matter because the place had burnt down at some point.
It was destroyed.
It burned at some point.
That's a good point. Yeah, but it doesn't really. I guess it doesn't matter if it's snow or ash. The bottom line was the Iron Throne, the throne room was destroyed. There was a hole in the ceiling, and and that's why a lot of us think there won't be an Iron Throne at the end because of that vision. Because out of all the things in the House of the Undying Vision in the book, that's like one of the few things, you know, that they decided to do. I mean, that's not even in the book, is the Iron Throne being destroyed. But that's what they decided to give us in this House of the Undying scene where they had so many possibilities. They showed us that. So that's pretty crucial. Okay, let's take one or two more. Sean Alva, do you think Daenerys will make the surviving Lannisters take the black to help Jon? Ooh. I don't know. It might be too soon for that because I'm not sure that she realizes the problem yet. Maybe she hasn't fully embraced it, even though she says, I will defend the North. Mm-hmm. You know, I could maybe see that. That's an interesting thought. Do you guys have a thought on that?
It would be a good solution, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
it would be
a good solution, but also I don't know who would enforce it necessarily. Like the North is between them and getting back to their homes, but without her actually in power, they could easily just be like, "Goodbye, I'm going home." If they could get away from the wall, I guess.
Hey, there we go. We just figured it out. Darian in the show is going to be Ed Sheeran. They need a singer at the wall.
They do.
Here we go. A couple of questions here. One is a super chat from John Mark Wortham. John is literally the world of Ice and Fire. Maybe he meant the song, but maybe he's the world of Ice and Fire. Danny is the stallion who mounts the world. I think he meant song, but I like that he's the world.
He's everything. He's Planetos.
And yeah.
I definitely agree that Danny is the stallion who mounts the world. That she checks that prophecy
as we
off.
debated earlier, it's up in the air whether John can be the song of Ice and Fire, and they can both be together and all that. It can have multiple meanings. But another question from Al Cindy. According to what faith will Danny and John get married?
Hey, good question.
Yeah,
Danny doesn't really have one. I guess the
faith,
seven.
so,
I don't know, yeah.
So I would guess old gods just because of that, because she doesn't have, unless she like is crowned or has tied herself to the faith, it would make way more sense for it to be old gods. Like especially if it happens up at Winterfell or depending on where it happens too, if there's a werewood there even.
Wow.
I say old gods just like John's parents.
And will Bran preside over the ceremony?
Yes.
Here's another question from Azaz, not Aziz, Azaz. Does wildfire affect dragons?
I think it probably does because even the fires of the Doom were enough to kill dragons. So I would think wildfire is probably enough to kill a dragon as well. By the way, we got another question about that earlier that I skipped over. I was wondering if Cersei will defend King's Landing by hurling wildfire at any attackers, which is that's possible. Yeah. All right, I think we should wrap it up. It's almost been 3 hours.
We're quite long, but at least you don't have to edit all of this.
That's right. So the excess Q&A questions will get cut and put into a special episode for patrons. It won't be an episode so much as just all the questions that I take out and dump into a file. So no intro, no outro, no spiel, just the questions will be there. And again, if you want access to those, it's only $1 a month to sign up for Patreon. We've got higher levels also, but that's a pretty good deal, I think. So let's go through that. Let's give some thanks. Thank you very much to Radio Westeros for sticking with us for these 3 hours. Remind everybody again where to find you.
Yeah, thanks, and special shout out to all the super chat people who have given us a little bit of beer money for tonight. Thank you.
Yeah,
I would say come and check out. We have an episode all about prophecies. If you like this, Standing Amounts the World, Azor Ahai, you want to hear all the prophecies laid out and talked about, come and check out our prophecy episode. Find us at radiowesteros.com, on iTunes. We've got a YouTube channel, although we're just a podcast. If you like a Song of Ice and Fire podcast, come and check us out. Cheers.
Absolutely. And Lady Gwyn, do you have anything to add to that? Or should we just give you a wave? Everybody wave at Lady Gwyn.
I will both. I will add that we also just released our newest quiz in our Quiz of Ice and Fire series to the public today, or actually at midnight last night. And that is also on prophecies.
See how many you can get. Right.
17 questions.
And then you can tweet it to us so we can see how many you've got right.
I went to go run out for a drink last night at the convenience store, and I saw that episode was downloaded or was there, and I was like, oh, I should start listening to this. And I'm like, I don't have time. It's only 30 minutes, but I wanted to start it right away. And I was like, wait, I'm really going to the convenience store and back. I can't listen to a 30-minute quiz. But I really wanted to start it.
Well, there you go. Otherwise.
And of course, Radio Westeros has a patron as well. We are both on Patreon. We're both on Patreon, and it's a great way to support the show in a recurring way and an amount of your choosing. And also we give benefits such as episodes early, shout-outs, nicknames, things like that. And we'll have a lot of content after the season that's for book only.
Yeah. And as always, you can be sure to send questions that are directed to one person in particular, whether it's Radio Westeros or us or anything. It doesn't have to be to us.
Right on. So let's give thanks to also Michael Klarfeld, who did our video intro.
And the map shot that we had in this episode, and these glorious maps behind us in all of our videos. So,
thanks also to Joey Townsend and my Jesse Koval, who have done our music. So thanks to patrons, starting with the mysterious BR, Hand to the King, Lord Jim the Fortuitous of Wars and Politics of Ice and Fire blog, and Warden of the West. He's also got a podcast called To Wage War. He's a very enthusiastic podcaster dealing with very lesser-known battles, and Jim himself was in the military, so he knows what he's talking about.
He's a triplet.
That's right.
I just have to say it.
And he's a triplet.
It's just all I can think about when I hear his name now. I'm like, there's two of him.
He's also known as Something Like a Lawyer, for those who know the name.
And he's a fine person.
He's been on your episodes as well, at least one episode, right? Or is it just the one? Yeah. And as well as on with us. Also thanks to Lord George Stormsville the Cunning, Lord of the Chiliad and Warden of the East, Kabeth the Unfrozen, Lord of the Bricks and Castle Crimson Light, Defender of the Old Gods and Warden of the North, Lady Kelly McMath of Covington, Lady of the Villa Hills and Crescent Springs, Warden of the South, Lord Osborne of Castle Werewoods is spreading the old gods by planting werewood saplings in the Reach, Stormlands, and Crownlands, and possibly overseas. Lord James Tuttle is King of the Stepstones and Narrow Sea, commander of the Royal Fleet, consisting of the Narrow Fleet, led by flagship Caraxes, and the Bloodstone Fleet, led by flagship Prince Daemon. Our small council consists of Lord James Inkblade, the Scholar Knight, Master of Whisperers. Grand Maester Saria of the Barrows is Cinder of the Citadel. Lord Robert Jacobs is Master of Coin, and Rosie the Clever is Master of Laws. Our lords and ladies in their castles include Lady Darliz of Castle Nyaki, the Alpha Patron. Lord Dan of the Red Mountains and Castle Great Bell is Breaker of the Second Stone. Lord Skip of the Veldt is Lord of Castle Ganges. Gregor the Toasty is Lord of the Bread Fort. I wonder how he's feeling about all that burnt grain these days. I think someone in the comment chat box mentioned that. Alicia Everlasting of the Green Blood is Lady of Desert Rose. Lord Ryan of Castle Stonegate is Guardian of the Rocky Mountain Pass. Lord Garin de Haviland is of Devil's Hand Keep. Ashlyn Winter is the Hawk's Eye, Lady of Castle Skyfall. Lady Mikkel of Moonacre is leader of the Werewood Protectorate Alliance. The Lord of the Halls of Castle Hillcrest is wielder of the Valyrian Steel Machete Everglazed. Lord Alistair Whitaker is Lord of the Dawnhold. Lord Bemmy Snugglebunny is Guardian of the Hidden 100-Acre Werewood, holder of the Vorpal Snugglebunny. Lord Brandon Brewer of Castle Blackroon is sworn alesmith to House Stark, Grandmaster of the Zithamancer's Guild and Keeper of the Buzz. Got a lot of questions in there today, too. Thanks for that. Brian the Defender is Lord of the Spear Fort and the Freelands, last scion of Clan McCulloch, their motto, strength and courage. The Bastard of the Wolfswood is First Forester of the Old Gods. He is sworn to House Ironwerewood. Their motto is listen for the silence. Connor the Dungeon Master is Lord of Catamount Keep and Guardian of the Smoky Mountain Pass. Our first sword... not our first sword. Well, sure. First sword is Jeff Gnarly Longsnapper. He gets 2 shout-outs this time. King's Justice is Sir Chor the Steady, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Blade Fate. Our Queen's High Council from Ashea. Here we go.
We have Lady Jane of House Celtigar, the Emerald of the Evening, wielder of the Valyrian Steel Axe Painkiller, Mistress of Sea Eagles, and Mistress of Ships. Then we have Lady Mai of House Swan, Mistress of Whisperers.
Yes, and we have a couple other Queen's High Council members whose names are being worked on, so we'll get those out as soon as possible. They're wanting to do their own names this time, which is always cool. Our Council of the Beard is headed up by Grand Maester Clark, Protector of Wisdom and Beards. Our Kingsguard is led by Lord Commander Sir Christopher Dane of Starfall, Sentinel of the Torrentine. Our Queen's Guard, of course, Ashea.
Yes, Lord Captain Commander Hema Helmont, the Sellsword Sentinel.
And Grand Flatterer.
Yes, exactly. I was going to add that. Lady Nymeria of House C. I should have practiced this. I want to roll my R's and then I don't practice it and I don't get it down. Of House C. Pirtle, my bad. Yes. Alexander of House Atreides from the seat of Dune. I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer. Jane Grey. Lady Esk of the Tattered Spire. First Sword of Albion. The Pest, who will have some more being added to their name, and Becca the Bard, Songbird of the North.
Our Beard Guard is led by Lord Commander George the Golden, and our History of Westeros Night's Watch is commanded by Lord Commander Daenerys Flint of the Night Fort, avenging the memory of Brave Dany, First Ranger Fabian Flowers, the Bastard of Greenshield, First Builder Patchface of Motley Wisdom, and First Steward Sir Jurian of the Torrentine, called Palewind. Also, a few random names that I like to pull nowadays. That's my new little tradition. Sir Daniel, the Autumn Knight of Paradox Falls. The Weary Man, custodian of the House of Black and White. We have Adesua of the Silver Tree. Weeping Lady Elise, breaker of the Third Stone. We have the Bastard of Burnside. We have Maester El Cinador. We have Maestress Arha the Silent, who shattered a link of Valyrian steel. We have Lady Stonerheart. We have... That one made me stop in my tracks. Okay, I'll end it there.
Yeah.
We'll save the next set of names for next time.
That I have a Hand of the Queen now, too.
That's right. Mike the Knight is Ashaya's Hand of the Queen. We haven't gotten a nickname settled for him yet, but...
But I'm pretty much full up now.
Yeah,
I'm really
true.
close. I think I have like 2 spots.
I think you have one spot on your council left,
yeah.
and that's it.
It was crazy to me, but thank you all so
yes,
much.
thanks very much for that. We really appreciate the support.
You know where the power is.
They know where the talent is. They all know that you do a lot of work, and that we couldn't do it without you. Okay, so I think that's it. We'll say goodbye on behalf of Radio Westeros, on behalf of Ashaya. Enjoy episode 5, and we'll be having our theories and predictions live stream on Saturday, and we'll be announcing the live stream with LML to talk more about the symbols as soon as we get that scheduled. So we'll see you next time, everybody. Thanks again. Valar rewatch us, Valar reweet us. Reweet us? All right.
Okay.
We'll leave it as reweet us. Sure, whatever. Bye, everybody.